spreading. They are north of 58 now. Yay. They were found last fall. This summer we had a workshop here about fire ants. But to give you a little background, the entomologist, the manager of the insect lab, came down and looked at our stuff. And he thinks that everything came in naturally because majority of the counties in North Carolina, they're already under USDA quarantine. We are not at this point. We actually have Nolan Hudson works with the Virginia Department of Ag and Consumer Services. He actually is right now scouting the fire ants and treating them. When, notice I did not say if, I said when, we go under USDA quarantine, and that is going to be a producer's responsibility. So be on the lookout. If you have any questions, let us know. We can get you some information, especially those in Greensboro, Brunswick, Southampton, some of the other counties, they already have it. You know, we have them east of here already. The Virginia Hampton Roads area, Southampton. Yeah, they're all up and down the beach. So we
but if you find them right now, what Cynthia's saying is we still call Department of Ag and
get
they
them
will
treated.
Treat them. Okay, so we don't have to do it ourselves. So if you find them, please go ahead and report them.
Yes, please let one of us know.
And we can get in touch with VDAX and get those treated.
Yeah, we'll need your address and a good phone number. But they are spreading. I was hoping to retire before they got here, but that didn't happen.
How long? I feel like there's always been fire ants.
There has been fire ants for many years there. We actually are lucky, mostly in the southeast and Texas, all the way to Texas and southern whole tier. The Mississippi River actually kind of sort of divides, I guess we'll say, our types of fire ants. We actually have single queen hives here, or mounds. They are actually a little easier to get some treatment in. The multi-queen mounds in Texas and Mississippi has some. They have multiple queens, so they are all even harder to get hold of. But they have actually found our species that is in Florida, but they actually move their way up.
And right now we're treating them with a bait. We'll talk a little bit more about types of
pesticides. Right now, yeah, the bait's the best thing. But the one thing about treating fire ants, this is for you guys who are in those areas, if you end up having to treat fire ants, follow the label direction. Don't over-treat, because if you put, well, you know, a lot of us say, oh, well, 2 tablespoons are going to do what I want to do. I'm going to put an extra half teaspoon with it. Well, even something that little can actually cause them to pick up, move away, and start a new colony. And if you want to see how big the colony can be underground, go into what they call fire ants and molten metal. Have you seen them? Yeah. And they pour this liquid metal down in there and let it sit and solidify, and it goes all into these channels. They dig it out and they can make a chandelier out of them. Some can be as deep as 4 to 6 feet. So the mounds you see on top might be about the size of this helmet.
Yeah, the ones here haven't been
real big.
Like the ones you see in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was in Texas this weekend, so that kind of made me think about it.
Now, when you said quarantine, you used the word quarantine at one point.
Yeah, USDA will put us on quarantine. That means we cannot move certain products out into non-fire ant areas without an inspection.
So anything that they could possibly be traveling with. So I don't know what that's going to look like.
You know,
but right
hay bales. Yeah, we're not under quarantine, but you know, when that happens, hay bales, bales of cotton, landscaping, pots. That's actually how they started moving them out of Virginia Beach. They found them in Virginia Beach first. When they started moving the big pots, like the gallon, I think it's what, 3-gallon pot? I think it was a 3-gallon pot. They actually had fire ants in those when they would plant them in people's yard. Yeah. So that's one of our new invasives. We also have a couple of more coming in. I'm sure some of y'all have seen the news with the spotted lanternfly that is doing a whole lot of damage up in Pennsylvania. It's actually been found in Northern Virginia. Christmas could be an issue for us, especially if we have live Christmas trees that are imported in from Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. For lack of better terminology, the egg mass looks like kind of like gray chewing-gum speared on the trunk. So they're actually trying to inspect those and stuff. Most times, lantern flies, from what I understand, don't like ferns. They like hardwoods better, but they can mess if they can. Just be on the lookout for that. The other one, this has been, I guess, what, the year, 18 months of invasives. The other one that they're looking at is the Asian longhorn tick, which is a very small tick. They had found it in Albemarle County the first time on an orphan calf. They found it on a horse. They found it with some, yeah, sheep originally in New Jersey, but they've also found it down in Southwest Virginia. They actually did a sweep and actually found some. What's really nasty about these guys is they're small. They're not much bigger than a city tick. They don't get much bigger than the end of your pink pen when they're adults. But it's not like a dog tick or Lone Star tick or deer tick. You don't find one or two. It'll be every stage of life. It will be hundreds, if not thousands. The animals can be anemic. Most all that they've found what, less than half a dozen male ticks. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's not very many. It's all female.
It's terrifying.
Which is terrifying. But one of the things they told us in service was it's a little easier to treat. So when we use the porons and some of the other things, we're treating them. But they can be in clusters, and I mean they can be hundreds to thousands. They found them on a whole lot of different things. Wildlife. They don't seem to like people very much, but they will get on you. But they really like livestock. They actually found some, was it Mountain County? The 3 horses were in there. I think there was 3 horses in a field. And they found it on one horse, but didn't find it on the other 2. So they're pretty specific. But wherever they find what they like it. And they hang on there. They are found in Asia and Australia and New Zealand. They do carry diseases over there thus far. Don't know. Knock on wood. They haven't found anything in the U.S.
But it's early.
But it's still early. Yeah. But we don't know. Yeah.
So is that like the what was it? I think it was a couple months ago, maybe a year ago now, when the Lone Star tick started breaking out.
Lone Star tick started several years ago, but yeah. But
it makes
they
allergic to red meat.
Yeah, they have a disease in them now. Yeah.
And we don't know how long a lot of these things are going on because it just wasn't a concept that we considered for ages. You know, Lyme disease kind of broke in on that thought process, and we're still figuring out what they're capable of carrying. So yay, more news.
More good news. So this
Happy
weekend
Friday.
you get your private pesticide line. So Lindy and I are here. We're going to spend the next few hours with you going over some stuff, and you have the opportunity to take the exam. This actually was designed and developed by Karen Carter. She's retired. She's agent up in Henrico County. She also worked with Pat Hipkins and Mike Weaver from the office at the Virginia Tech Pesticide Services office. They're both retired. And then Kathy Dichter, she retired from VDAX. So let's see if I can make that work. So why do you want to certify? Okay,
Let me click for
there we go.
It's just tap.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. It's a way to manage your risk because if you're going to use pesticides, you need to be able to protect yourself, protect the environment, and control what you want to control. One of the things that you're going to have to understand is Virginia, you will hear this again. If you take nothing out of this class, this statement, I want to ingrain it in your mind. Virginia is a label is the law state.
So what does that mean?
So, and what that means is the label of your pesticide is a binding legal contract for the use of that pesticide. It is between the manufacturer, EPA, and you as the end user. So, if you misuse that chemical by label, if you put too much, put it in the wrong spot, it ends up on the neighbor's place, those kind of things. You can actually be investigated and potentially fined. We are a label is the law state. If you remember nothing out of this class, always read your pesticide label. I don't care if it's a can of Raid and you're spraying a wasp nest in the corner of your porch. I don't care. Read that label. We are a label is the law state.
And these formulations are changing
All the time.
And so even if it's a product that you're used to buying and you're familiar with, just always double check.
Yeah,
They're
because
changing a lot.
yeah, they will change some little something on the label. I know I had gotten some stuff and I had gotten the exact same stuff I'd gotten like a couple of years before and I'd used up what I had in my store. And I was following those label directions while I got my new one and I started reading them. It tells me I can use 2 ounces less of this now. You know, so I mean, but read the label. Okay. You'll hear that a lot. Yeah. Okay, now, part of the rules come from US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. They actually register and license label all pesticides. Now, they do it under what's called the FIFRA. That's the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, Rodenticide Act. Pesticides are, most people think when you think pesticides, what's the first thing that comes into your mind?
Killing bugs, right?
Killing bugs or weeds, right?
Right.
Well, there's rodents, there's nematodes, there's fungus, there's viruses, there's bacteria. The list goes on. Do you realize that Clorox is technically an insecticide, a pesticide? It kills viruses and bacteria, right? But technically, it is a pesticide. Okay? Disinfectant is also a pesticide. Now, there's also different kinds where you have restricted use pesticides, and that's why you need to have your license for your private operation. If you need to buy restricted use, you have to be licensed to get that. Over the counter, the stuff like you can get at Walmart. You can even get it at Nutrient. You can get it at Southern States. You can get some over the counter stuff you don't have to have a license for. You still have to follow the label. But if something happens and you need a restricted use chemical, you need to have that certification. Okay? So remember EPA and FIFRA. You'll see those again.
So this is the federal law.
That's the federal law and the agency that governs it. Now here in Virginia, we have the Virginia Department of Ag and Consumer Services Office of Pesticide Services. They're the ones that make sure we get trained and certified and recertified. Under that, their rules are called the Pesticide Control Act here in Virginia. And they actually tell us, you know, what occupations need to be certified. You ladies and gentlemen are going for your private, which is for farms, okay? The Office of Pesticide Services, they enforce the EPA FIFRA rules, worker protection, and also our Pesticide Control Act rules, okay? They make sure they keep a record of everybody who's certified in the state, whether it's commercial, private, registered technician, all those kind of things. Lindy and I technically have to be commercial certified in order to teach you all and to do demonstrations and research. Okay, there are over 22 commercial licenses. So if you, ladies and gentlemen, decide to go into a landscaping business or something else later on, or go into custom spraying for other ag producers, get in touch with us because there are commercial licenses for that. You cannot do it under your private license. Okay. Now, the other thing is they license pesticide businesses. So if you, like for instance, you go to work for Southern States, okay? Southern States actually has a business license. But if you start your own business and you're gonna, you know, spray ornamentals and turf and greenhouses, then you'll have to go for a business license. Okay. They also register all pesticides that can be used in Virginia. A lot of times we see these ads pop up and we have, oh, such and such chemical because you're looking for something, like you're looking on production or something like that. And there'll be some chemical ad pop up. Well, that chemical may or may not be registered in Virginia. You go across the line in North Carolina, there's things that may be registered down there for use in Carolina that's not registered for use here. Okay, so we have a specific list. You can actually find that out. Usually everything in our pest management guide, which you, ladies and gentlemen, can actually access online, it usually has all the chemicals that are registered here in the state that we can use. And if you're ever in doubt, you can actually get on the website and start looking at see if that chemical.
And so why we're set up like basically the federal government gave the states their option. You can either let us tell you, control your pesticide licensing and so forth for your
And
state,
some states do.
or you can handle it. And so Virginia said, we'll take care of it, thanks you. So that is why it's set up like this here.
Yeah.
And then within the state level, there's kind of multiple players here for one of those.
And the thing is, one of the things that you're also going to find if you move to another state, their state may be set up similarly, it may be set up differently, it may be total federal. There's what, 3 states that are still federal? Yeah. Check. Which is, it's scary. Okay. Now we're getting in the nitty gritty. Now you got a little background. You will see VDAX, Office of Pesticide Services, and Pesticide Control Act again, possibly, so put that back in my brain too. We're going to actually start with a core manual. We actually have the 12 version now, the 2012 version's out, no, the 16 now.
Yeah.
2016. Brain's not working this morning. Still on vacation mode, I guess. But we have some categories. We've already talked about some of them, and then we're going to talk about more of your responsibilities as an applicator in this section. Okay, we talked a little bit about general use, or this is over the counter. You know, we're ready to use. I mean, if you've ever looked at Roundup ready to use, it's very convenient if you're paying a whole lot for water. But you do have some general use. Raid, for example, Weed Be Gone, some of those. Scott's Weed and Feed, crabgrass control. A lot of those are general use. You can buy those a lot of different places. Okay. Now, restricted use, it will actually tell you on what we call the ingredient statement of the label that it is a restricted use pesticide. It will have that on there. And that means that you have to be certified in order to purchase it and apply it. Okay. So that is going to be the difference there. And the thing is, even some of this restricted use chemical, you notice here it says danger. Well, there's warning words that we have on there, but you could actually have an over-the-counter, ready-to-use, general use, whatever, that may have a danger label on it as well. You can have a restricted use that has a caution label, but it may have something to do, like if it gets in water, what it might do to fish. Might be what it could do to pets. Those kind of things. If you treat an area where somebody's dog or cat. Does that make sense? I guess I just don't have the right touch. Okay.
Maybe you touch on the slide, not the blank.
Okay. All right.
I did see where you hit.
Okay. All right. Well, private applicators to get certified, they are the ones in production. So if you're a greenhouse production, you're doing ornamentals, you're doing cotton, you're doing peanuts, you're doing corn, you're doing soybeans, greenhouse type stuff, vegetables, fruit, you're considered a private production agriculture. Okay, that's what you're getting today. It's stuff you use on your farming operation. Now your commercial, this is things that you get paid for. You either get paid for, like say you come to Southside and you're working on the grounds. You get paid for that. You need to go into the commercial side. Okay? If you start your own business, you need to go on the commercial side. If you have to spray as part of your payment, DOT, believe it or not, they have to be commercially certified. and they spray alongside the road, they have to be certified.
If you are a farmer and your neighbor that farms wants to pay you to spray for him or her, you have
To
to
have a commercial license.
Even if they don't wanna pay you and you're just doing them a favor.
No,
No, now, wait a minute,
That's
there is a
funny.
gray area, there is one exception.
right now.
Okay, you have a bush hog,
Yes.
I need bush hogging done on my farm, I'm next door to you. I got my license, you need something sprayed. If we barter,
It's okay.
it's okay,
Okay.
So,
but the minute one penny changes hands, I gotta have a commercial license to spray.
and I caution still.
Yeah.
That's become a dilemma because a lot of folks will trade it spraying for money, right? You know, that's more than I see a fair amount, which
Yeah.
is fine. There's no money changing.
Yeah.
The problem you run into is you're the big guy on the block with the big sprayer and you're doing all of this spraying for everyone else. Suddenly there is a record trail, paper trail of you purchasing all of these restricted use chemicals, but you don't have that much land. Okay, so then some inspector, anybody that goes to CPS or whatever it's called now,
Nutrient.
or to Southern States and looks at these records, because they're checking up on this kind of stuff, especially with some of these newer chemicals.
Yeah, they know Cynthia purchased a boatload of something.
Yeah, you purchased all of this.
And you've only got 15 acres.
Right.
Where's it going?
And so then you may run into an inspection or something like that. So that, we're definitely not encouraging people to go that route. It's fine on the small scale, but if you think that's something you're gonna wanna do for people on the
You may
regular,
wanna look at a commercial.
Yeah.
you may wanna look at it commercially. Yeah. So that's a question we get a lot now.
Yeah.
Lately.
Yeah. Okay, and some of the commercial, now, one of the good things right now for you all is if you have your private pesticide license for at least a year, and taking the classes you've taken, you could possibly be grandfathered in to go ahead and step up to commercial. For those folks who have no experience at all, here in Virginia, the way they have set it up is we have a tier system. So we have what's called a registered technician. These folks have to have a 40-hour class. They actually have 20 hours hands-on and 20 hours classroom. And they actually have to be a registered technician for at least a year before they can go into commercial applicator. So this is their stepping stone if they've never had anything. Commercial, this could be something in your future. If you're for hire, you've got to have a commercial license. If you're government, you've got to have a license. So we have to have a commercial pesticide license for teach, as I said earlier.
One that's specific
Big
for
four.
teaching.
Yeah. It's called Category 10 Research and Demonstration. And then not for hire, and it depends on what's being used for. But a good chunk of those are going to have to be done. So say you go to work for the town of Lawrenceville in their water treatment, you would have to have an aquatic commercial license. Okay.
Commercial gets complicated.
Commercial gets really complicated. You want to call one of us or the agent in your area, in your county, and say, hey, I'm thinking about opening this business. Well, first things they're going to do is they're going to talk to you about what categories or category you might need. The other thing they're going to do is give you the pesticide investigator's phone number and name. You want to have that investigator at your center. We are very lucky in this region between Anton Goodwin, Robert Christian, Richard Jones. We've got 3 really good ones. So depending on where you are in the region. We've got some really good ones. They like working with their people. They like making sure that our folks get it right the first time and don't have to run to catch up.
And they'd rather you call and ask them, investigators
Yeah.
look at the scary word, right? You're like, no, I'm not gonna call it.
But
They're not gonna hunt you down because you called and asked this question.
no.
Theoretically, if I did,
Yeah.
they're really good to work with.
Yeah.
This is when you want to
And
work with us.
they are awesome to work with. So, but that's some of the categories. Okay, now we're going to talk about your qualifications. We already talked about the 20 hours and 20 hours. And then you have to get the registered tech within your first 6 months of work. Have it at least a year to get your commercial. And then, like I said, we already talked about studying. So if you need to order those, you decide to go in business, let us know.
Yeah, talk to us. There's a lot to consider.
Yeah, there is.
And that's a much more difficult test.
Yes,
So today, you'll be fine.
you'll be fine.
Private test.
But we want to go ahead and make sure you have this being where you are and what your future is. Okay, now with the registered technician and with the commercial license, there are some fees that have to be paid. Right now, the registered technician is $30 for 2 years, and commercial is $70. I will tell you, those are getting ready to go up. They have not sent us the official; it's gone up yet, but right now that's where they are. But just be on the lookout that if you do go commercial, it is going up.
And if it is something you're thinking about, this is probably only going to get harder and more expensive over time. So
If you're
if
interested,
it's something that really makes sense for you, then the sooner the better, probably.
and just to give a plug for the investigator here in our region, Richard Jones is actually, if you're interested in the near future about the possibility of doing agricultural plant, maybe going to work for somebody like the Nutrient, I almost said CPS, Nutrient or Southern States, somebody like that to spray. He's actually doing what we call 1A class at Ag Plant. And they'll be offering that exam in January, February. So if you're interested in something like that, see us after this, we can get you in contact with him. Now, to take an exam, you have to have a letter of authorization or a notice of authorization to be able to. You actually have to send paperwork and money into DDAX and get that letter back. It's good for 90 days. One of the things about you ladies and gentlemen today, is if you were taking your private exam at DMV, you would actually have to get this authorization letter for that. But since you're taking it here, you don't have to have a letter of authorization.
You say DMV?
DMV,
Yeah.
you can take part of the exams at DMV. I personally don't like it. It's a little distracting to me. It's a little distracting to me to take an exam in DMV. I don't know about y'all, but it's a little distracting to me. Now, you do have 90 days to take the exams, either at DMV or if it's commercial registered tech with people who can proctor that exam.
So usually a pesticide investigator.
Yeah, especially commercial.
Cynthia, I think for you.
I'm registered tech. I can proctor registered tech in private. And I'm not doing any other commercials. So today we're going to do a paper test. We have that. We talked about DMV. Like I said, I don't test well with DMV. That's just me. Also, our pesticide investigators, they'll actually come in, when they come into the county to investigate something or look over something, they can make an appointment. You can do it by paper with them. You can also go to Richmond on certain days of the week and take that exam as well. But you have to make appointments so they know you're coming. Okay. And yeah, registered tech, like I said, I can talk to that. Anybody in Nottoway, if you decide you want to start working on your commercial and you may go on a registered tech or know somebody who needs one, Haley at the extension office up there can talk to her. But if you go to DMV, you've got to have a notice of authorization, must have a photo ID, and you have an hour to take the exam.
And this is for your commercial one.
That's
You
any
don't
of
need
them
a letter
actually.
for today or.
You don't need a letter for today. But if you're going to DMV, you need a letter for today. Now, you gotta make a 76 to pass this thing. And then if you actually, when you pass, you'll actually get a letter saying you passed and you get your license. Now, your license comes in one of those perforated, and I didn't bring mine in, perforated, little, what I call like a tax document. You know, when you get the sides off and that kind of stuff. So please don't let anybody throw that away thinking it's junk mail. We've had that happen to some people. That it actually, but they'll actually,
But here.
yes.
Pass them around. I'll pass both. One, I have a private and a commercial.
I do too. I have a private, not commercial. They usually put the same numbers on them, that kind of thing, but different prefixes or suffixes.
Okay, you want some wrong names on.
Yeah. So, and your probably still has Tucker on it. You haven't changed that yet. But, you know, they're good for 2 years. You have to recertify every 2 years. You can rank up to 4.
They don't come laminated like that.
No, they
So,
don't,
like,
you have to laminate them
And then they
yourself.
don't fit in your pocket in
Yeah.
your wallet. 'cause
The
they're
other
so
thing
big.
is you have to sign those. You'll get like a 4x6 that's like a certificate that if you have an employer or in the farm shop or office or whatever, they have a notebook, you can make a copy of it, put it in there. But the signed one, I'm gonna give you a friendly piece of advice, and I tell this to the commercial, and then you can probably put it verbatim. When you sign that license and you cut it out of that piece of paper, I want you to put it behind the license that is most important to you. Your drivers, your fishing, or your hunting. Okay, whichever one is most important to you, you put that license with it. I am just saying.
Because you're supposed to have
And
that
then on
on you.
when you're spraying.
And I know, when we're, especially on the farm and stuff like that, you don't necessarily always have your wallet in your back.
Yeah, but
Make sure
you should have it
it's
in the truck.
or it's in the truck or something.
Okay, so make sure it's there, or close enough.
Another good reason to laminate them with your
Yeah.
farm.
Yeah. Because inevitably you come to research, I don't have my license. I did that to you last time. So I say that a lot, so put it behind the license that means the most to you.
Or wherever it'll fit your
Whatever
wallet.
that is. Oh, apparently that's not what I need to do.
Oh, that's Microsoft.
No, okay. Hit the wrong thing. Go away. Yeah,
Oh, just hide it on the other screen.
there you go.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Alright.
gotcha.
Okay.
Search.
Alright, go in the little circle. If you take your register test, you take the commercial. Now, I will tell you on the commercial, you will take another exam initially that's very similar to the core exam you're gonna take today for your private. Deals more with safety and rules. Your commercial exam will deal specifically with whatever category you're gonna have. All over 76. Now, for your commercial and you just need to throw this out of your brain. What I'm gonna tell you in a minute is most important. Register tech and commercial, they expire June 30 every other year. Your private, it's one in your brain, please. December 31 every other year.
But you're on the calendar year.
You're on the calendar year. But the thing is, when we act, and you go ahead and that's that one. When we okay, we talked already that private applicators do production, registered technicians, they can use general use chemicals. They can use restricted use under supervision of commercial applicators, but they have to be under direct supervision. Then commercial applicators, they can apply restricted use just like private can. Now, some of the other things, keep going, I think it's maybe, okay, how do you stay certified? This is one of those things. Every 2 years, you can make up to 4. Okay, now, this one I want you to remember, December 31st every other year. The good thing is you have 60 days to recertify without penalty on any license. For yours, for private, it's February 28th. You can't buy any restricted use chemicals in those 60 days. But you are still good and you have no penalty. That means you don't have to come back to us and take the exam. Now, if you figure it out in June, you got to come back to us and take the exam. But we usually offer recertifications in December, January, and February.
Because that's when most farmers have time to go to a 3-hour class, right?
Yeah, the 3-hour class. So, but we offer those, and we usually have them all over the region. There's like usually 9 or 10 a year. So if you wanted to come,
So if you get your license,
yeah, when they get their
Yes.
license,
if you if you get it with this test, we have our classes coming up, so you have the option to bank 2 extra years, or I guess, 2
Yeah.
extra years, if you come to one of our classes this winter.
just be thinking about that. Now, as I said, you'll be able to do this in your sleep. The label is the law, so read and obey the labels in the state. Okay, the label is the law. What's really important for you is to understand what you can do with your license. You can buy restricted use, you can apply restricted use. You can also train your workers on your farming operation. But you have to keep record of that. You also have to keep records of your restricted use applications as they form. Okay. The other thing is when you keep those records are good for, have to be kept for a minimum of 2 years. You see a pattern here. Keep 2 years in your brain too. Okay. Unfortunately, we have new record books, and unfortunately, we don't have them. I actually have them somewhere in my office, but they're doing some painting. They're buried in a pile. So the investigator is supposed to get me some, so I will make sure that you get some for y'all to have.
So
I
you don't have to
apologize.
keep your records in these books.
No, but it gives you.
But it shows
gives
you
you a really nice
everything you
outline.
need to write down.
Yeah, you can do it on an Excel spreadsheet, all kinds of different things, but there's been some changes in the rules, and unfortunately, like I said, I don't have books with me today because they're buried, and I was afraid to knock down the Leaning Tower of Pisa in my office. But I'll make sure you get those. The other thing is if we have a chemical spill, and it's one that's hazardous to the environment and human health, you have to report that by phone within 48 hours to VDAX. And within 10 days, a written report has to be sent in. 48 hours and 10, you will see that again. We have had some spills here. As a matter of fact, you know, there's been some folks when they reported theirs, they panicked on about day 8 because they actually had to have a hazardous materials crew come up and clean up the mess. About day 8, when they were supposed to turn in the paperwork, they were panicking because they hadn't got any report. Because they couldn't finish their part until they got the stuff from the hazmat folks. So they're calling the investigator on it. And what can I do? So the investigator helped them out. So, but just be mindful that if it's a spill that can be harmful to the environment, that does include your the chemical that is not even mixed yet and your mix. Okay, and what it is. That's got to be. Also, one of your responsibilities will be to keep OPS up to date with your addresses. And if your employer changes. The other thing is very important, read your mail. We have this happen a lot more with our commercial than we do private. Somebody in a mail room will decide, that's junk mail. We've had that happen. So we really want everybody to do their home addresses.
Yes.
When they change, let us know.
Yeah.
So if you need to get in contact with anybody, you can always start with your local extension office. Call one of us, call your local office. Most of us have got our certification. We do have pesticide investigators. You can get in touch with them if you need it. Office of Pesticide Services in Richmond. And also you've got VDAX. You can go on their website. You can go on Virginia Tech Pesticide Programs pages too.
And it's important for you to realize this, the VDAC website is actually pretty good.
It is.
With information. It can be better, but it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a full list of all applicators in the state of Virginia that can be found on the VDAC's website. So I just want you to be aware, so if you lose your license where you think you banked credit and your license in your pocket's about to expire, you can go on there and look and see when your actual expiration date is. It's also nice to be aware that your name and address is on.
Nothing else, but it is your name and address and your pesticide number.
And your pesticide number, but that is public information, just so you know.
Yeah.
That's a great place to go look it up. That's where I go to double check people when they need to know when they're expiring.
And I go double check mine occasionally.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions on that first unit? Okay, I want you to remember December 31. The label is the law. Virginia Office of Pesticide Services, Pesticide Control Act, EPA, and FIPA. 2 years, keep your records. 2 years for your license, you can bank up to 4, and you have 60 days, a grace period to recertify. Y'all got that?
2
in your
days
brain?
to report spill.
And 2 days to report a spill, 10 days to write it, to have a written up report and get it to be done. Everybody got that in their brain? Okay. All right.
Ready?
Next unit. Okay, pest management. What's going to be really important is the first things first. We always get a call. I need to spray this bug that's on my squash. Well, is it a squash bug? Is it a ladybug? What is it? The first thing you've got to find out is what is it? Okay. So you got to have that pest identified, whether it's an insect, a weed, whatever. And the thing is, if it's a ladybug or the ladybug larva, it's actually a beneficial agent. So
But that may be what all that's saves.
yeah, is the ladybug, and they just know that something's going on with the plant. So the thing is, we need to know what it is. Also, we need to know, this helps us tell you when you need to spray. How many people have been seeing bagworms lately? Haven't been seeing bagworms on trees? Wow.
You
I
know,
want to come to your yard, but it's not mine. Okay, those bagworms actually need to be treated in May.
but now it's
Now's when we see them, and that's when we're getting calls on them.
Are those the ones that they build like all the big like silk all through the trees?
That will be a teen caterpillar.
yeah.
Okay, they have a spring hatch and a fall hatch.
Backgrounds of those, they're usually on like evergreen.
Yeah, and they have that little bag thing that kind of looks like a
It's like
diamond
it
shape.
looks like part of the tree.
Oh.
But sometimes
It
they'll
looks
lose all their
like
needles.
they're
they'll
usually like
cover it
darker
on these
gray.
little-
Yeah, and they
Okay.
kind of look like this. They look like a little Christmas ornament this
Yeah.
time of year.
They've been
Yeah.
killing the trees.
Yeah.
They will
Okay.
defoliate. They actually need to be treated in the spring.
So there's a worm hiding in there.
Yeah.
It's this little like protective cocoon. So obviously that's something that's hard to treat and it's protected. And he's not visible.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we call
Yeah. And then in February, like in March, when we start seeing henbit and chickweed blooming, that's one of the purple ones and the white one. That's when we get the calls. Believe it or not, that needed to be treated in October and by November.
it. Yeah. Now, I mean,
You could probably still squeeze in, but
depending on how the weather goes. But
yeah, but that already needs to be treated. Okay, so get that problem identified, know what it is. The other thing that's going to be extremely important is proper timing. Okay, like if you're going to use, has anybody heard of milky spore for the control of June bugs and Japanese beetles? That's one of those that you need to get it when it's in the larval stage. Get it under control. The other thing is usually we see when Japanese beetles break, we go get a Japanese beetle trap. Where do you put that? I'm not going to ask, but I want you to think about it. Do you put it in your rose garden if you have Japanese beetles? Don't answer this. Do you put it in your vegetable garden if you have Japanese beetles? You just attracted Japanese beetles from a mile and a half away into your garden. Put it in the far nether regions of your yard. Or some places people say, put it in your neighbor's yard. That way, because, and I drive by, there's this one place I drive by pretty regular, and every summer they put out this Japanese beetle trap in the middle of this most gorgeous rose garden I've ever seen. And it's just like, drives me crazy. Okay. So make sure you think about the timing, where, how to select it, where to put it. Okay.
and timing could be time of
Year could be the stage of life.
It could be weather, trying to make sure temperatures,
Fungicides.
and everything is right for that.
Fungicide application is extremely important. Weather.
Stage of life with insects especially, because as we know, insects, do a lot of metamorphosis through their life, and some states, a pupal stage when they're in a nice little cocoon is probably not ideal for trying to kill a bug, right? So we really got to think through and hit things at the right time.
And some of them that can fly, they can fly out of the treatment area very quickly. They may not get enough,
And the problem may not be pest related. And we don't have time to go into that kind of identification and stuff today, but that is something that's very key because real often we'll get a call in every plant in the garden or multiple species or a whole row of trees will be knocked out or showing some symptom, and that's typically not pest damage. When you
Yeah.
see everything affected,
It could be
pesticide's fine.
nutrition, it could be compaction, it
Right.
could be a lot of things. You know.
So making sure we know that before we
Yeah.
spray it and make things worse.
So, diseases, a lot of those are caused by the fungi and the bacteria. Powdery mildew, we saw a lot of that this year and last year because of the rain, especially in cucurbits, things like squash, when they turn that white looking great. Your cucumbers, pumpkin. That's one of those that's very weather related, gotta be treated. Nematodes, these are microscopic roundworms, you will see that again. Insects. Insects have 6, I know y'all remember this from class and probably from biology. 6 legs, 3 body parts, right? Arachnids are spiders, ticks, and mites. They have 8 legs and 2 body parts. You will need to know that again. Weeds, that's a plant out of place, right? Because one man's weeds, another man's wildflower.
And we constantly get calls from the town when we send out, here's a certification opportunity for your commercial applicator. And they go, oh no, we don't spray any pesticide. We only spray Roundup. And you're like,
It is a pesticide.
herbicides are pesticides. But a lot of people think pesticide insect,
Yeah.
that's right. So weeds are definitely,
Snails,
a lot of snail
a
calls
lot of snail calls.
from flower gardeners.
Oh, yeah. And invertebrates, rodents and birds. A lot has changed in the rodenticide side. Okay, weeds. We talked about a weed is a plant out of place. Now, you have monocots and dicots. And I think I probably ought to let Lindy take care of this one.
Here, let's
I'll let you take over.
Well, I mean, these are things words we've heard at least some point. Y'all may have been doing this more recently. When we work with grown adults, it's been a while since we've heard these terms a lot of times. But our monocots and our dicots, right? Do we remember cotyledons? The tiny first leaf, right, that comes out. So grassy weeds, our grasses are our monocots, right? Grasses have longer leaf blades, right, with parallel veins. They tend to have fibrous roots, right? And these are our monocots. Our grasses are our monocots. Our dicots tend to be our broadleaf plants. So here's a really rough one. They tend to have more of a taproot with some little root hairs. So most of our broadleaves will have a taproot type root structure. Again, they're going to have fibrous roots, and then when they run into things in the soil, that may completely change the root structure. But as a general rule, those are our monocots and our dicots. Why is this important? Well, obviously their physiology is different, right? They're a little bit different. One of the key components to herbicide usage in the world is these 2 categories. We can select real often. Our herbicides are intended for one or the other. We have grass herbicides, we have broadleaf herbicides. So people can spray their lawns for all the clover, and not kill the grass. So there's obviously physiological differences that we can use to our advantage. But it's important to be able to at least go through, look at our yard, or look at whatever we're looking at and realize if I use 2,4-D, if I use a broadleaf herbicide, what all am I going to kill? And do I, how close can I get to things? It's important to be able to identify these 2 plant groups, monocots and dicots. And then from there, just like we talked about with timing, the more we understand about our pests, whether it's a weed or an insect or a fungus, the more we understand about it, the better able we'll be to control it, right? So understanding the life cycle of the plant is very important. Is it an annual plant? Who can think of an annual plant? Nice little.
Tulips.
Oh, they're a little different. But yeah, it's kind of tricky in this region because we have winter, so that kills things that may not normally die, like tobacco, for instance. So tobacco is a perennial. It lives for many years, but here it will freeze to death. So it's raised as an annual crop here. But annuals are plants that are gonna complete their life cycle. They're gonna go from seed to making seed in one season.
See that again.
So seed to seed in 1 year, an annual, right? One season. These plants tend to make lots and lots of seed, right? Our biggest weed problems and our biggest herbicide resistant weed problems are annual plants because they make tens of thousands of seed. Why does that make them more resistant or likely to be resistant to herbicides? It has nothing to do with their ability to tough it out. All it has to do with is their ability to make tens of thousands of seeds. So one of their offspring is likely to be different in some way from all its brothers and sisters, right? So they're more likely to get to a different genetic makeup more quickly, right? Just from normal processes. Survival of the fittest. So then, if you spray all of its offspring and one survives, you're like, oh, I must have tested. What are the chances that one's going to make offspring that can survive that herbicide? Much higher, right? So that's how we run into these herbicide-resistant issues. Annuals are typically our problem there. Biennials. What is a biennial? If an annual is 1 year, 2 years. So this is a little trickier. We don't think about it as much, but typically the first year of that plant, it'll be in this rosette stage where it's just like flat on the ground. It's like leafed out flat, okay? Queen Anne's lace, you know that, is an example. Thistles are our #1 biennial problem. We don't notice them the first year. When do we notice them? When they're this tall and making seed, right? So the first year he's gonna lay low. He's gonna sit down and make a nice taproot.
Pretty much all the way
There,
to China.
right?
Sometimes.
Yeah, so that we can definitely not pull it up, right?
You step on it barefoot.
Or
Yeah,
right,
you
you
step
step
on it
barefoot because you don't see it. So after year 1, year 2, he goes, all right, do or die. I gotta make babies. So he goes crazy and makes this little fuzzy seed head, and then we go, oh dang it, we got a field full of thistle that have already made seed. So this is the biennial. First year is in that what we call the rosette stage. It lays flat, kind of like looks like a flower face. And then the second year it goes up and it goes to seed. They're tricky. They can kind of get past it sometimes. Perennials. What is a perennial? Plant that lives for many years, right? Annual, living 1 year. Biennial, 2 years. Perennials, many years. So trees is like the first thing we think of, right? Something that sticks around a while. These are a little bit different. They've had time to really put down roots, okay? They tend to be more woody type plants, right? Because they've lived longer. So they're a little tougher, maybe. And it's not something we can make it past bush hogging stage, so mechanical control may be more difficult. But they've got this root system that they can bounce back from. So these are all things we've got to take into consideration. Perennials, often a lot of our perennials go dormant for the winter, right? So spring those now, would that be ideal? No. Why these chemicals work is because these plants are actively growing and completing metabolic processes, right? So if they're not actively growing or completing any of these, if they're just hanging out, that dormant kind of protected state, we're not going to be able to have effective treatment. So knowing what type of plant we're dealing with, what is its life cycle like, and what can really help us narrow down how to deal with this problem. And then if it comes to chemical treatment, what's going to work? And how many sprays may it take, especially for like a perennial, repeated application. So summer annuals and winter annuals are our 2 big annual categories. Right now, all the winter annuals are popping up. I don't know if you've noticed. The grasses kind of died back, and we've got a lot of little broadleaf things popping up. They're kicking into gear. They kind of lay low until next. Till the spring, and then they'll go crazy. They'll how old? Got an X in the sound. I don't know. So winter annuals and summer annuals. It's important to know this because we do want to treat before they're going to seed, right? So winter annuals we try to treat now or a little bit earlier, and summer annuals right when they're kicking off, when the season warms up. Selective versus non-selective herbicides. Who can give me an example of a non-selective herbicide? Something that doesn't differentiate and just kills. Roundup. Great example. Roundup is our go-to non-selective herbicide. Selective herbicides would be like 2,4-D we talked about. They only kill broadleaves, right? We've got grass herbicides. So selective herbicides are going to target one thing or another. Not necessarily just these two categories. We have a lot of things that target, especially pest weeds. When we look at other pests that can target specific species or families of insect. Like Lepidoptera, the butterflies and moths, with a lot of insecticides for those. Parasites and pathogens. So a parasite, anything that feeds on or harms another living organism. And a pathogen is something that causes disease-causing organism. So both of these terms come into play. You may see those again, but parasites, we think of like ticks like that first. Pathogens, a flu virus or something. Insects. All right, so we talk about insects being, I think real often in our minds, we think insects include spiders, we think bugs, right, as a whole. But insects, in the scientific definition, are 6-legged, 3-body segmented critters. So they have jointed appendages, they have their nice exoskeleton of chitin, 3 pairs of legs, 3 body regions. The legs and the wings all come out of that middle section, the thorax. So we've got, if we're only killing thistles for this week. So we've got, 3 body segments, but all the legs are going to come out of this middle region, okay? And the wings would come from here as well. They have specialized mouth parts, so there's different ones. Some are good chewers, like grasshoppers, take big bites out of things, right? Aphids are tiny, so they're doing a lot of sucking of juices out. Stink bugs and things in that family, plant bugs, they've got that piercing mouth part that stabs in and sucks juices out. So we've got a lot of different things. These are all important features to help us identify what kind of pests we're dealing with. There's so many bugs out there especially. So helping us narrow it down will really help us treat that issue. Metamorphosis. This is really important to identifying the proper life cycle, life stage in which to treat these pest problems. So gradual metamorphosis, okay? Or we've got 3 stages. We also call this incomplete metamorphosis. Like they've got a bunch of different names for it, gradual or incomplete metamorphosis. There's only 3 stages. That's why they call it incomplete, as compared to complete metamorphosis, where it's 4. When we think of the term metamorphosis, think of a butterfly, right? And we think of those 4 life stages: egg, larvae, or the worm caterpillar stage, right? And then pupae, the cocoon, right? And then adult, the beautiful butterfly, right? Think about a stink bug for a second. Do you think its life cycle works the same way? Or a grasshopper? Does it have all of those life stages? No, right? It definitely doesn't turn into a beautiful butterfly, right? So it has this egg, nymph, adult life cycle. Have we heard the term nymph before? Yeah, probably never thought about it a lot. So nymph is the immature stage of any of these insects in gradual metamorphosis, okay? So it's the immature stage. Within that nymph category, they have different instars, right? So this is the juvenile form. So there's a big difference between an 8-year-old and a 17-year-old, right? There's a lot of stages in our lives, okay? So it's kind of similar to how we grow. They start out in an egg, but once they hatch, they look like a mini version of their adult form, right? And they just keep growing. They shed their skins and they go to the next stage or instar. But they stay a nymph. They stay a nymph until they're an adult. The adult is the reproductive stage, but it's often also the stage that can fly. Okay? So you can tell an immature real often a nymph because it doesn't have its wings yet or isn't able to fly. So that's a good way to tell, because otherwise there's some color changes, especially in stink bugs, through their life cycle. But like a grasshopper is just a little bitty grasshopper and it just gets bigger, you know? So it's hard to tell them apart other than the wings. So egg, nymph, adult. So we've got this gradual metamorphosis for a lot of our insects. And then we've got complete egg, larvae, pupae, adult. So the larvae is the form that's going to probably do the most feeding. And that's going to do a lot of defoliation. Our caterpillars are going to munch away quite a bit. So it's also the soft body stage, right? You know, an egg is usually pretty protected, so we don't want to treat really, there's less options for treating eggs, for killing eggs, right? So that's not the stage we're trying to kill. So if we find something we know is a pest problem, we're able to identify the eggs, we're going to want to wait until we can actually kill it to treat. Then the larval stage is the soft body caterpillar, right? You can squish them with your fingers. I mean, it's not hard to kill them, but if you're talking over acres or large areas, or maybe they're a stinging caterpillar, maybe that's not an option. So, but the larvae is the soft body form. It's also doing a lot of metabolic processes. It's growing, it's eating a lot. So one way we often treat these is they take it in, they consume it. Whether it's on the leaves of the plant or whether it's taken up by the plant and they're taking it in as they eat the plant. Pupae, it goes into a cocoon or some kind of protective state, and it's hanging out and completing this next life cycle. We really can't treat anything in that stage, okay? But it keys us into what's to come, right? So if we notice our crop or our garden has a bunch of cocoons and we're able to identify those as a potential pest problem, sometimes the adults can be a pest problem. Or even if they're not going to do any of the feeding themselves, we know they're about to lay a bunch of eggs that are going to hatch into caterpillars, we can treat the adults then once they've hatched out. All right, pest control goals. So there's a couple main goals we have when dealing with pests. Prevention is one. That's the stage we're in right now with fire ants in the counties that don't have fire ants. We're trying to keep that from happening, right? We're trying to prevent that. Suppression. So suppression means they're already there, right? We're just trying to keep it under control, right? Trying to bring it down to an acceptable level, all right? And this is what we're doing most of the time. We're not eradicating. We're not wiping out the world here. We're just trying to tone it down so that we're able to produce what we need to produce. Eradication, it's usually not an effective technique or attempt at control at all. We only do this, and you see this in cases where there's an invasive that has no natural predators here and we're terrified. Basically, it's what we'll try to do. So this is usually not effective, but they do try to wipe it out before it is able to get a foothold in the U.S. and spread to other places. But typically not effective, at least not long term.
Or at least for the animals, the insects, but for plants, like we've got bamboo, eradication is the goal there.
Yeah,
There is no acceptable.
kudzu.
Yeah, kudzu.
Yeah. It's just one of those things that's almost impossible to achieve.
Go just that part of the mindset of pests or plants too. You got
right. Finding that balance, right? What can you live with? And that it all comes down to what your goals are, right? Our goals are different as a producer than they would be as a homeowner. Homeowner calls are something doesn't look good and I want to fix it. So their threshold, how much they're going to allow as far as damage or pest control is very different than someone that's, producing something for products. Pest control guidelines. Only when pest is causing or expected to cause more harm than is reasonable to accept. And that acceptance level varies. But we have to have a goal in order to determine that. Use a control strategy that will help reduce pest numbers to an acceptable level. And do as little harm as possible to everything except pests. That's why these selective chemicals are ideal. You know, we can pinpoint just the pest problem versus something like seven dust, which anything that it touches is gonna die as far as insects. Things like that. We want to try to streamline it as much as possible because the whole goal in this is balance. Balance for us from an economic standpoint or a visual standpoint, but balance in that ecosystem, right? We want to keep things as balanced as possible. So we don't have to enter. So threshold, I said threshold. Threshold is a term we use for what's acceptable, right? This is the point where we reached the level that we're allowed to, we're going to accept. So levels of pest population at which one should take pest control action in order to prevent unacceptable injury or harm. So that could be a threshold, and that threshold may vary based on what our goals are. Homeowner fit is often zero. We've done zero of this pest problem. In a giant soybean field, if I find 50 kudzu bugs on one plant and none the rest of the field, I'm not going to spray, you know. So these thresholds vary depending on our goals and on economics. I don't know if economic threshold is on there, but you may hear the term economic threshold, and that is the money line, right? That is when we have to treat. We've done the math, and we know we've got to treat, or we're losing money, and it's worth the cost of treatment then to balance out the loss we have. Economic threshold, the pest population level at which the cost of using pest control options is outweighed by the potential for greater economic losses from the damaging effects of the pest. Okay, so we know it's worth our time and money to treat at this point. That's what the economic threshold is. Reasons for pesticide failure. Number one, incorrect identification of pests. This is so key, and it's so common. There are so many different pests out there. There are so many resources to help you. I know it's kind of intimidating. I'm like, I got these responsibilities now. If I get this pesticide license, I gotta keep records and report spills and all that good stuff. Identifying the pests or not, call an extension agent. Talk to people that are familiar with whatever situation you're dealing with. There are lots of ways to identify pests. Google is helpful, but do not rely on it if you don't have some base knowledge of what family of insect you may be dealing with or pest you may be dealing with. Making sure you identify it correctly is key. So call somebody. We're here to help.
And if we can't do it, we know somebody who can.
Text us pictures, but make sure they're clear. You guys, your generation.
The new Google phone's pretty cool. You can actually take a picture of something, and by that picture, it can look it up. It can give you what it is, which is pretty cool. I don't know how well it would work for bugs, but
Yeah,
I'm sure that technology's coming.
I'm sure.
I just got that phone 2 days ago and I pointed it at our cat just for fun of it. It didn't just say cat,
They
it's
said
called
that's
version that
species.
it's the pointed eared side or plain tip Siamese. I mean, it was just that good. I'm gonna go after some bugs with it one of these days. But yeah, but like I said, don't trust Google because the people that label those pictures may not have known what it was.
Yeah,
that they
they
labeled.
may have labeled.
I mean, I can't
But
tell
it's
you
a
the
good
number of
starting
times I've looked at stuff that I'm like, this picture's not, that's.
And
No.
another thing is, there's things from other parts of the country that it could be the same thing, but it could have a different
coloration.
common name.
That's the other thing. We speak a different languages outside. We have different words for things that aren't, you know, our common names for things are not common names, even in Blacksburg. So if you go anywhere, be careful. You'll be embarrassed at some point. But it's important to realize that we don't all use the same words for things. So getting it back to that scientific, just identifying there. Yeah, thanks. Sorry. I don't know how to make it any quieter. It doesn't have sound on.
I have a hammer running.
So correct identification. Incorrect pesticide, so using the wrong tool for the job, right? That happens a lot too. We forget, I don't know, or we don't realize, maybe I've been using dual-wording my whole life, I won't kill this. Things like that. We just get comfortable or we're not that familiar with things. Incorrect rate or timing. This happens a lot. We just kind of shoot off the hip or read the label wrong or don't do the math right. So making sure we do that. Timing is really key, especially with weather. And the labels these days on herbicides especially are very specific. Like, here's your temperature range, here's your wind speed range.
Here is
You've got to have a window this many days with no rain.
yeah, or your plant can only be 4 inches tall.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're trying to control.
Improper equipment or calibration. No one wants to calibrate. I understand. It's time consuming. You're ready to roll first thing in the morning. Nobody wants to sit there and fool with these equipment if they can help it. But calibration is key. It's a little easier with some of the newer stuff to make sure we're getting the right rates and stuff out. But calibration is key. So making sure equipment is putting out what it says it's putting out. I get a million calls about a drill not putting out seed right. No one calibrated it. They just trusted the little original meter from the 20-year-old drill that said clover right here, and it didn't work. So calibrate, always calibrate. Infestation after control applied. This happens a lot too, especially if you apply a non-selective. You apply something that kills everything. You've got this open canvas, right? Just inviting things to come in. So you've thrown off the balance, especially with insect pests. If you apply something that's going to kill everything, something's going to come into this open environment and just take over. So we real often have secondary problems that are worse than the original from just killing the world out there. And then pesticide resistance. This is a reason they fail. We spray a field or a bunch of fields. We go, oh, I missed a few. It's okay, just a few, But did I skip them or did I spray them and they didn't die? And that's where we run into pesticide resistance issues.
And technically, that is truly a survival of the business.
And it could be for any number of reasons that they. So avoiding pest resistance. Rotating chemical families is really key. Okay, so our chemicals all work in different ways. And there will be a million people that will set a daisy in a glass of colored water in front of you and tell you if that daisy is taking up that color, that's how all chemicals work. If I spray anything, it's within that plant. And that's not true. All of them work differently. There's a lot of different ways in which these work. And if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't probably have any use of chemicals. Rotating the ways, families, the ways in which they work really helps cut down on that. So if this plant survived that spray because it had a thicker cuticle, it had a thicker waxy coating on its leaves, and it just didn't take it up, we've got to think about how else can I kill that plant? Maybe I can push on it, maybe I can pull it up on hand. But if we're talking about field full and we're trying to use a chemical option, what other ways can these work? Would a drench work? Can it take it up through the root? Like, what are our other options? So rotating really helps with that. This is really key with pest issues, internal parasite issues with small ruminants and things like that, where we've got a lot of issues, and there's not as many options for one. That's not an area of a lot of research. It's not real lucrative, but that's somewhere you really have to rotate because you're going to build up resistance issues so quickly in those populations. Using pesticides only when necessary. We forget sometimes, we freak out when it's resistant. We forget we can mechanically control things or pull weeds. So using all the tools in the toolbox is key. And the pesticide is not necessarily our first option. A lot of things can be controlled by mowing, by hand pulling. just a few at the beginning is not an issue. Practicing IPM. What is I?
Integration.
That's fine.
Yeah, have y'all done that?
You'll see that again.
This is your keyword. This is our using all the tools in the toolbox phrase.
Because y'all just thought it was going to be spraying chemicals. That's only one tool in the toolbox.
If we wanna to have a license and to utilize the spray option, it's important for the longevity of the use of these chemicals for us to be able to use them over time, to realize we have other tools, to not rely on them solely, okay, because that will wear them out much faster. So integrated pest management, what does integrated mean? Different stuff, right, mixed together, right? So we're integrating, we're mixing up or using different options of pest management, okay? We refer to this as all the tools in the toolbox, right? We have a lot of principles, different pest control practices. Should we keep going? Okay, so IPM, Integrated Pest Management, is combining the appropriate pest control tactics into a single plan to reduce pests and their damage to an acceptable level. Okay, so it could be using multiple tactics to get control of this pest. So it relies on monitoring or scouting. What does that mean? Scouting. Yeah, looking for them, right? We want to go out looking for them. This is key. If we know we have a pest issue every year, especially a particular one, we need to be looking for it before it's too late, right? Before it's an issue. Squash bugs in the garden, right? You raise squash, you'll have squash bugs. There is no doubt on that. If you know you have squash bugs, because those little suckers have, but you need to be looking for them ahead of time, right? So what kind of pests are present? We've got to go out there and see, what do we have? When I scout a soybean field, I take a net, just a canvas net, and you wade through the soybeans, found where you think you can walk for 15 sweeps, and you're sweeping across these plants 15 times, and then you grab a net real quick and hold it closed before anything flies out, and then you're carefully opening it and peeking through, and I'm counting, looking for all the different species, seeing how many different species we have, and I'm counting how many of each. And if I'm not seeing a variety, I'm like, something's out of balance, right? And if I'm seeing a lot of one, that's when I start to go, okay, we may have a pest issue that needs treating. But first I need to know what's present, and then I need to know what are the numbers, and what is my threshold? How many can this field tolerate? And that will depend on, especially a soybean field, it will depend on the stage of growth. How developed are those soybeans? What kind of pest is it? Is it something that's only going to feed on the bean itself, or is it going to feed on the plant? What if the bean's already pretty developed, do I need to worry about treating the plant? It's already past that, it's fairly mature. What kinds of beneficials? That's the big thing I look for when I scout a soybean field, especially. I want to see beneficials. I want to see big eye bugs. I want to see lace wings. I want to see beneficial insects, or insects that are feeding on other insects, or are not pests of that plant. That tells me there's some balance in this ecosystem. Okay. When I'm looking at a tomato garden and we got hornworms everywhere, if those hornworms have those little white things on the back, have you ever seen them? Then I'm like, okay, I don't need to deal with these. They may continue to feed a little bit, but they're going to be so weakened by the wasp that has parasitized them, that has laid eggs on them. Those little white things are actually pupa. They're actually the pupal stage and not the eggs themselves. The larvae have gone down in that hornworm and developed and fed on the hornworm of these tiny little wasps, tiny wasp larvae, and then they pop out, make their little cocoons on its back. Okay, so I don't want to kill those worms or remove them from that environment, because I want those wasps, those beneficial insects, to continue to develop there, so that they will keep that natural balance, so I don't have to do anything. So knowing what kind of beneficials I'm looking for, and whether they're present, and when is the right time to begin control. And that's gonna depend on so many factors. What we're trying to control, its life stage, what it's feeding on in its life stage, and what my economic thresholds are. And how to control efforts successfully reduce the number of pests. This doesn't mean I find the pest, I spray, I walk away, right? We need to come back and make sure, did it work? Did this herbicide kill the weeds I tried to kill? Did anything survive? Did I get proper control of the insect issues in this garden? Or do I need to do something else? So that is IPM. It's the full spectrum. The beginning, it's the planning, it's the doing, and it's the evaluating. So IPM tactics. Some of the first things we do, and this is true of lots of crops, is host resistance. We're going to pick a plant that can tolerate the pest issues of this region, right? Whether that's something that can tolerate specific diseases, yeah, or yeah, fungal pathogens, or whether it can tolerate just an animal that can tolerate a lot of tick pressure, things like that. So picking something that has host resistance. It's very easy these days.
You'll see these again.
Plants, especially, to look up what they're resistant to. If you know you have a disease issue, a fungal issue, anything like that, a viral issue, a lot of these things can be look up. They have ratings for how well they tolerate these things. So you can pick a plant for this field over here that always has this problem that may be different than what you would want for this other field that doesn't have that problem. So this is part of IPM. Picking the right tool for the job, or the right plant or desirable for the job. Biological controls. What do you think that means? Grab one as well. Biological, living, right? Biology is life science, right? Like essential life, living things. Biological controls. So these are living controls. So this is other insects. This is other funguses. This is the introduction of something else that's living to control the pest population. Organic tobacco. Real often, they'll release ladybugs. Ladybugs, especially the larval stage, not as much the adult, but adults feed, but adults are focused on reproduction, right? The larval stage is growing. They're fiercely eating, right?
Oh, lions.
They look real aggressive for this little guy. But they're released to help control aphids, right? Whether or not you get ladybugs to stay in a field is a whole other ballgame. But that's an example of a biological control. We release another living organism. The milky spore is an example. If somebody calls me about moles in their yard, I'm going to say, put out milky spore. That doesn't kill moles. It has nothing to do with moles.
It kills their food source.
It infects their larvae, the June bug larvae, the food source, what the moles are after. Moles are tunneling through, eating all these grubs in the ground, right? If you ever pick something up and put the white grubs underneath, hay bales especially. That's what we're controlling. We're controlling their food source with another biological, with something living. We're putting down this milky spore that's infecting the larvae, killing them, and then the moles don't come because we don't have that food source. Cultural controls. So this is more like cultural practices. And these terms can get a little confusing, especially in the plant pathology, the disease world, and the insect world. They have a little bit different terminology of what they consider in each of these categories. So don't get too caught up in it. You won't be like testing on the specifics. But cultural control are typically like cultural practices, like sanitation.
Culture crops.
Yeah.
Cover crops.
Crop rotation, right? Cultural practices that you can do to reduce pest issues. So you know, I've got a buildup of this pathogen in the field. Next year I'm going to plant a different crop here, put that one somewhere else, right? Cultural controls. Mechanical controls is more like hand pulling or hoeing weed or things like that, right? Something mechanical to it.
Picking off the hornworm that doesn't have
Right,
the nice
picking
little grains of rice on it.
you know, things like that. So mechanical controls. Sanitation, they have it separate, in a cultural control. But
Especially in
sanitation is
greenhouse.
key. Greenhouses for sure. Anything in a greenhouse. your window for response to a pest problem in a greenhouse is much, much smaller because this is the perfect environment for things to live in, right? So if I get a disease or an insect, it's gonna just spread right through that house, right? It's contained. You're not getting extra airflow or you know, giving it a chance to change that climate at all. It's stuck. It's stuck in. So sanitation is key there. Every year we have a tobacco call where there's something wrong with the seedlings because the trays aren't rinsed out properly. They're reusing these slow trays every year. Or it was the bottom of the stack and they bleached them, bleach solution them. And the ones on the bottom collected all of the other bleach from the others, so then you've got some chlorine issues in those trays.
Then crickets can get in there.
And then crickets eat tobacco, the only thing I think. Chemical controls. So chemicals obviously are the last option, right? Because that's it can affect so many more things and really throw off that balance. So we try to leave that for last. The label is the law. Cynthia before the end of class will probably be saying the label is you're supposed to say the law.
Yeah.
So just be prepared for that. The pesticide product label is a binding legal agreement between the EPA, the product registrant, and you. Okay? So that's something none of us realize. Like when your mom buys cleaning supplies, that label is a legal agreement. We don't realize that. But that is how things work in the state of Virginia. So please keep that in mind. This is your legal responsibility. So the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, that's our federal agency, right? We talked about that regulates and registers all pesticides sold and distributed in the U.S. They also have an effect on your licensing requirements and so forth to some degree. There's been some legislation proposed in the past, and we were really afraid, and it didn't come through this last go around. But keep in mind, politics affect everything. So the more you can stay up on your license and bank hours, the better off you'll be, because we just never know. One change in political office and EPA gets to go ahead on some stuff, and we have 10 times more regulations on hours that are needed for research. So stay ahead of that if you can. Acts in accordance with the guidelines contained in FIFRA, the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act.
So you've heard that twice. So you know you're probably going to see those again, right?
So that's the federal law, federal legislation. It approves all language included in the product labels.
Yeah, and several labels have changed this year.
And they're all required, all the labels are required to have the same part.
Yeah.
The
But
same
they can be in
sections,
different orders.
but not in the same order, so good luck reading the label.
But because usually the one thing you can depend on always being on the front is going to be the ingredient statement, where your common name, your active ingredients, your inert ingredients, that kind of thing are. But directions for use, PPEs, agricultural use, all this stuff, they can be in different orders. So no two labels are exactly alike.
And they're
They
getting
do have
thicker and
sections.
thicker and thicker and thicker, so
Yeah.
it's getting fun to find.
Yeah.
But it approves all the language there.
Yeah.
What is labeling? It's the instructions and directions located on the product. These days it comes as basically a booklet. It's kind of sealed on there on the chemical. That's probably something you want to
Peel here and
peel off, because they're usually made peel off, and then there's a label on the back that still stays that says what it is and the active ingredient. But you peel it off and keep it somewhere safe that it's not going to get outside spilled on it. And then you have that to look through and read. So that comes on the product. Other instructions and directions may accompany the product. There is what we call the SDS sheet, the safety data sheet. So real often if you go in to buy a chemical, you'll buy it and they're supposed to hand you this additional packet of information. They should say the same things, but not always. So just remember, if there's any conflict between the additional information and the label is the law, okay? So go with the label. The SDF, the safety data sheets are designed for emergency purposes especially.
Yeah.
So that's something you grab if someone got poisoned or got exposed to something, that's something you grab and take with you to the hospital, or you grab for someone else to take to the hospital. So you want to keep it somewhere readily available, that's not going to get pesticide all over it, but where everyone can find them.
Yeah, I used to keep them all in the notebook. Just
Right.
around the shelf labeled, that's all it was.
Yeah, usually you want to keep a notebook of all the STI.
And believe it or not, I mean, it's not only farmers that's gotta keep it, I mean, janitorial staff's gotta keep
The
it,
town,
towns gotta keep it.
for things like
Your barber's got to have one.
Which I had it when I was
For the
teaching
stuff
in
they
middle
use in
school.
their shop. I mean, it's, your doctor, everybody's gotta have it.
technically like hydraulic fluid.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be on file. It's pretty.
Gas station.
Other instructions and directions, specialized instructions and directions in separate documents.
Yeah.
Referred to on the label.
Yeah, they, like for instance, there may be an endangered species label on there and it will refer you to a website and you have to look up your zip code.
See if
I haven't
You're
looked that
allowed
up
to
yet,
spray.
I usually look it up in December to see if we have anything. Last year we did not in the zip code. I usually check 2 or 3 zip codes around the area, but that's not saying that in the future we will not have. But the label is the law, you have to check that and make sure that, you know, nothing's popped up. I usually try to check it.
so label information. This is pretty normal. This is what you can see. So you're going to see the brand name, and that's what we talk about in this, right? We say Roundup. That's the brand name. We do say glyphosate or not, but not as much. The next thing you're going to see is the active ingredient. Okay, so this is, you got 360 in here. That methylamine sulfate dicamba. So dicamba is our #1 active ingredient here, and then we've got dimethylene salt of related acids, sulfur. So this is, those active ingredients are what is designed to be doing the job, right? This is what's doing the job. That's not to say that the additional ingredients, inactive, is that where I go?
Yeah.
And I think
You did.
double tapping is what you have to do to change sides.
Okay,
I think
double
I
tap,
forgot,
okay.
yes.
And the inert ingredients or the inactive ingredients. These are the other additives that are added to either keep it in suspension or keep stuff from settling out to help it. Some of these things may be mixed already to have a carrier that helps penetrate leaves on plants so that can help get in there or things like that. These are things to also keep in mind in certain situations. Although they're not intended to be the thing doing the job, they may do something else. So it's not that they're completely safe, okay? So just keep in mind that those are there as well. And so these should all add up to 100. And okay.
And the thing is, this is also called the ingredient statement, just in case you need to know that.
And that's usually right there on the front.
Yeah.
So this is the label that you're getting a license for, to be able to purchase chemicals that have this restricted use pesticide. So this is, if it has that on it, you have to have a license to be able to purchase it. And the other next section you're going to be looking for is the directions for use. How do I use this product?
And it usually has a list of what it'll control, that kind of thing.
Right. And that's where you want to look. So your legal agreement says, I'm going to spray this product or use this product how it says, the amount, under the conditions it says, and only for the pest problem that it says it can treat. On the non-pest that it says. So it'll say like, you can spray this on soybeans for stink bugs. Okay? Under these conditions at this rate. But you've got to make sure it's approved for the crop or plant or whatever that you're spraying that you're not trying to kill, but also to kill what you're trying to kill.
Have y'all noticed the similarities between what she's saying and what they were telling us 2 weeks ago about the DQA and giving injections and all that kind of stuff? It's the same line of thinking there. This is what it's for and only what it's for, and this is how much you use, and that's only how much you use.
I guess they talked a little bit about the extra that we use with the vet.
Yes.
They talk about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pesticides don't have those libraries.
Yes. There's no vetting.
No, you're here. Yeah. So RUPs, restricted use pesticides, only to be used by certified applicators or by persons under the direct supervision of a certified applicator. So technically you only need one of these per farm, and, you know, someone could work under you, under your direct supervision, if you have the license. But it's a good idea for everybody to just go through training, get the license, make sure everybody's covered. If you need to run another job, there's nothing worse than having to oversee someone at all times. So it's worth it just to get everybody certified. Designates products that could pose acute toxicity. So the reason they're restricted use is it could be acutely toxic to people or to wildlife. So acutely means it can happen pretty quickly, right? Not chronically, not like over time it's affecting you, but like it could do something pretty quickly. Groundwater contamination concern. That's always a big one these days. Is this product may be fine for use out with people, but we're worried about getting in the water table. So that would be a reason. And then it could be a threat to aquatic organisms, and we're all the time looking for the little critters these days that are endangered to protect. So the threat to aquatic organisms is one. Types of formulations. Yeah, I'll let you roll back into this.
Okay.
Favorite.
Okay, yeah, this becomes one of my favorite. Okay,
She loves formulations.
love formulations because it depends on what you're doing as what you're going to use it. And no matter what the chemical, it will tell you what it is. An EC will be an emulsified concentrate. And that means it's going to be that thick, gooey stuff. And you're going to mix it with something. Okay? The F is going to designate flowables. So they're going to be kind of liquid. They're going to go on in. And they're going to stay in suspension pretty easy. The emulsified concentrates may not. You may have to keep them mixed up. Okay, wettable powders. Those wettable powders, they're not like, they're actually going to be suspended in some water. You're going to have to keep those mixed up. They can actually fall out. Okay, so wettable powders. Your dry flowables, those usually mix a little better. Think about when you mix sugar in tea. If your tea's a little warm, does your sugar dissolve better or worse? Dissolves a little better, doesn't it? Okay. Now if you go in, so that would be kind of like your dry flowables. It would mix up pretty good.
Never make tea.
Okay.
Great.
It's nasty. Yeah, I hate
Well, I was just thinking,
It's a
you know,
vegetable.
that's usually the easiest way to do it because you'll see it. But when it gets cold, it takes a lot more time for that sugar to go into suspension, right? Your wettable powders are that way. That kind of gives you a visual in your mind of how those work. Okay. Now, when the microencapsulated, they actually have a coating over the top of them that can either help them better in suspension if it actually goes into a liquid form, or it could be on like a granule or something like that, that when you put it into, when you spread it out into the flower bed or whatever, when it gets some moisture, it breaks open and it soaks up that water and does what it needs to do. So it can be microencapsulated. Okay, granular. Those are usually already ready to use. You put them either in the spreader, have it calibrated, and it goes exactly where you need to be. Your weed and feed on your yard. Crabgrass control, those kind of things. Now we also have what's called water-soluble pouches, or the bags. They're a whole lot better now than they used to be years ago. We had those. They actually had the right amount for a certain amount of water. And unfortunately, years ago, they would kind of gum up. They turn into like this jello-y looking stuff. They're a whole lot better now. They dissolve a whole lot better. So these are used, especially with some dry stuff, because if you've ever opened, have you ever opened a bag of flour in the kitchen? What happens? Poof! A lot of these dry flowables and wettable powders are the same way. But what happens when you take a breath?
You breathe it in.
You breathe it in. That could possibly make you acutely or chronically ill. Okay, so think about that.
Think about things like Tide Pods or whatever.
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me
Well,
started.
as far as the dissolving hours.
Yes, yes.
Or
they-
what are the things for the dishwasher? Those little.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
those things.
jet rinse and stuff like that, yeah. Okay, some more label information. You will find the manufacturer's address on there. Now, you'll see the company, the name, possibly the address. It may not be the street address, it could be the It's a city and state. Now, the thing is, you'll see these again. You have EPA registration numbers. One is the establishment number. It's this one right here. Oh, no, this one right here. And what it does is every manufacturing facility for this company is given a specific number. So that number tells them exactly which facility it was, because there could be multiple ones in Texas. TX tells us it's in Texas. Then that could be the plant 1 in Texas, okay? So it could be in Missouri, it could be in Iowa, it could be in Virginia. There will be an establishment number of where that particular chemical was made. Every chemical, every type of glyphosate, which is AKA a form of Roundup, each formulation of glyphosate has its own EPA registration number. Raid has its own EPA establishment and its own registration number. Okay? So it tells you, think of it as this is what it is your registration number, establishment number is where it was made. You will see those again. That is also some of the records you've got to keep. Because if we have, say you used something and it didn't work at all, everything was right. You did everything correctly, you followed the label, you did it, and you had a train wreck. If you call Nutrient or Southern State and they get this, you get this information, they could go back, they could have something happen at the plant with that particular chemical. Guess what? They just bought your property. Okay? But they can actually trace those back. They can do recalls of y'all have heard the recalls on meat and different vegetables. This can work the exact same way. Okay. All right. Signal words, you'll see these again. Danger, poison, that is the most toxic. But there is one phrase you will see on every chemical. Keep out of the reach of children. You will see that on everything. Okay? Look at the stuff in your cupboard. Look where you keep your cleaning supplies. Even look up your own shampoo. Keep out of the reach of children. Okay? And danger means it takes very little to actually make you sick or can possibly kill you depending upon it. The other signal words, the moderate one is going to be warning. The lowest toxicity is going to be caution. So think caution, warning, danger, danger, stolen property. Lindy's creeping me out, creating yellow. Okay,
You gotta
so,
rate them like that.
yeah. Okay. So every pesticide label contains what words?
Keep out of reach of children.
There you go. Okay, now, so it's got to have those. Got to have that phrase on it. Notice it has it in here twice. This is very important. Okay, some other label information. It can have environmental hazards, human hazards, wildlife hazards. It will tell you what they are. You know, like can cause eye irritation, so you might want to wear goggles. It will also tell you what clothes you can wear, how you may react to something, environmental hazards. They'll even tell you, how far away you need to keep it out of the water, away from water sources, away from playgrounds, away from the road. Anything like that will be on there. If there's anything on endangered species, it will tell you to go with that endangered species spot. Okay. All right. Other information, you can have practical treatment in case you swallow it, get it on you, those kind of things, what you need to do, how you need to do it. Now, if you get it in your eyes and you rinse out your eyes, always start from the nose out. Our tendency is always to lean our head and try to get the eye first. Got it in it because we want it out of it. We just put it in our other eye.
Is this a clear cut label?
Probably.
Holy.
This
That
is
is one that you better know exactly where this is.
yes.
Because if you swallow this,
It can.
your chances are not good
Yeah.
at
It's
all.
not
But
good.
that's what it's
Yeah.
labeled for. If swallowed, the effective treatment for paracot poisoning must begin immediately. This is why you do not pour chemicals in to coffee cups or to soda bottles to store them, because this happens more often than you
Yeah.
want it to.
Well, I've been around long enough, I've got a million and one stories. I actually have some friends who are paramedic, and the lady actually drank some Roundup. She had a 45-minute ride to the hospital. They gave her a cat. The poor paramedic in the back of the rig, he happened to be one of my farmers at the time, and he would take a swallow before he got on the radio, so he was throwing up because she was throwing up in the back of the rig. So, I mean, when they tell you, things like midnight clay, if you have spills, this kind of stuff, anything, these statements are very important. Okay, in case you get it on you, in case you have a spill, how to control it, those kind of things. Skin contact, you gotta remove the clothes, wash your clothes, wash your body, all that stuff.
But
Okay.
that's why you want to read this label before you use the product, so that you know, at least have an idea of what you're dealing with.
And it may be something that you decide, I don't want to use that. There may be another chemical that is more on the moderate side that will do a job for you as well. Okay. But read the label before you ever take it home, because trying to return them can be a real challenge as well. Okay. All right. Storage, it'll tell you how to store. They'll tell you temperatures, how to dispose of it. Now it is on the label. It is a federal law. You have to triple rinse and put a hole in the containers. They cannot be reused. Catch the drippings out of the barbecue grill. Those kind of things. And under the barbecue. That is no longer, can't do any of those kind of things. So you can actually offer clean, triple rinse or jet rinse containers for recycling in certain areas. We have it here in Brunswick. I think Southampton has it. Charlotte has it. Mecklenburg has it. Greensville, Emporia.
If you're not in one of those, though, we can get
We can get you in contact with us. We just had our pesticide disposal program this year, getting rid of unwanted, unloved, and unneeded pesticides. But it will tell you, that label information will be here. Tell you the temperatures, not to let it freeze, not to let it get too hot, because that can change the viability of that chemical work and do the job you've actually got it to do. When to read the label? You need to read it before you buy it, before you put your money down. So make sure it is the right chemical for the right job. Okay? Make sure you read it again before you mix it, so that you have everything you need to have to mix it. Okay. Before applying again, so you know exactly how to apply it and how much to apply. Okay, where you're applying it to. And also before you store it. Make sure you need to read that label 2 or 3 times, because my brain don't work probably as near as good as y'all's do. You probably read it twice and you probably almost memorize some of it. But I have to read it 2 or 3 times to make sure I get everything right. And then also disposal. Okay? The label is the law. If you are in violation of the federal law and our state law in a manner that's inconsistent with the labeling, you can be cited and fined. Fines start between $300 and $500, depending on the violation. And if you want to see what some of the violations look like, you can go on the DDEX website and look at them. Some folks owe tens of thousands of dollars.
And that has nothing to do with like civil suits, like if you're right neighbors.
That's just violating this.
This is just,
Not having the proper certification, not having the proper PPE, not hauling those labels, not hauling all that stuff. Okay. So you want to make it
using a product that's not registered in Virginia.
Oh, that's a big one.
We were so close to North Carolina, and a lot of us farm in both states. We've got to make sure that the product is registered and legal in the state of Virginia.
Yeah, and the thing is, some stuff registered here in Virginia is not legal to use in North Carolina because it's not registered there either.
Right.
So.
And you can buy a lot of stuff online now, and there's like you don't know if you buy it off Amazon whether it's registered. So that's stuff you need to check up on.
Yeah.
And I would recommend doing for that reason.
Yeah. Usually, what's sold in the state is usually what it is. There might slip 1 or 2 in occasionally, but it's very rare. Usually, the investigators can check. Okay, pesticides may not be applied to any animal, plant, or site that's not labeled on that, that's not listed on that label. So if it's a greenhouse chemical, you can't put it out in the middle of the 50-acre field. It's got to be used in the room.
And those are two very different
Yeah.
groups.
Where we see a lot of issues with this is, especially the glyphosate product, we've sprayed, say, around the farm area with an agricultural type Roundup. Well, mom or spouse or somebody says, oh, spray, you got a little Roundup, let's spray the driveway. Spray my walkway. Well, if it's labeled only for agricultural use and you've done it for homeowner, guess what? Violated that label. But then again, in the same way, oh, I sprayed, I use my homeowner Roundup and I sprayed a little of the walkway and I've got the driveway. Yeah, I got enough. I can spray around this building, around my shed, whatever. If it's only labeled for homeowner use and you use it for agriculture, guess what? You're violating that label too. That's where we see it a lot. Cannot use higher rates than are recommended on those labels either. Okay, what it does allow, it will tell you the rate and how often you can apply it. A lot of these fungicides, it will tell you like every 5 to 7 days or within so many hours after a rain. That's on the label. Okay. Also, it will tell you how to control those targeted pests that may not be listed on the label, but you will have an additional label. You'll have a specialized label. We get those in tobacco, strawberries sometimes. There's 2 or 3 special. We can get special labels and something that will control a targeted pest, but we have to have that special label, and we can only get it once a year. That. Okay. And then how do we spray it? What pressure per square inch on our sprayer? What kind of nozzle? Some of them are down to exactly the only kind of nozzle you can use.
Those new chemicals.
Those new chemicals. They tell you the nozzles, they tell you the speed, they tell you the pressure, and it's specific for that chemical. So the nozzles and stuff that come on your sprayers are probably not the ones you need. Some of them will actually send you the nozzle. Okay. And then the others that you can mix it, you can mix some chemicals together, such as fertilizer, other chemicals, that kind of thing, but you want to make sure they're compatible. You don't want them to turn into gel. You don't want them to change color. You don't want them to drop out. You don't want them to heat up. Because if they do that, and you do that in a jar, what we call a jar test, where you do compatibility, because if that stuff starts coming up, I don't know about y'all, but I would really not want to change the hoses on some of these sprayers because they got Jello in them. Okay? That would be expensive and very time consuming. Your pocket knife trying to beat it out of certain things, it's not an option. Okay? So it will set up our concrete. So we can mix chemicals, but we need to make sure they're compatible. They will tell you that on the label what it's compatible with. Okay? And then you can mix multiple chemicals. Now, the thing is, if anything is restricted by or prohibited by your state law, you can't do it. Okay, some of the formulation, emulsified concentrates that usually hold some of the petroleum-based products. They may be used as carriers, and they may end up harming some things. Have you ever seen something, don't use this on certain plants because they become photosensitive? Some of this may be that petroleum. Wettable powders, like I said, they're going to, you can keep those agitated, they can clog your nozzles if the particles get picked up.
Just for quick, emulsifiable, like mayonnaise.
Yeah, it's got an oil in it.
Yeah, just as far as y'all know mayonnaise, I can't think of what I'm trying to say there, but
It becomes an emulsification. They emulsify it all together. So these concentrates, they're kind of like the middle stage of that, and so they'll still mix up with water. They don't become that whole gel pack, but they can become that gel.
just trying to get it in your mind.
Yeah, so that makes sense. You know, and the dust, I mean, they usually don't require any mixing, your dust or your granules. But the thing is, with dust, they can drift a little bit better than the granules can. Okay. All right, talked about, you know, that coating that releases over time, granules, again, no mixing. Aerosols, they're gonna be ready to use. That's gonna be your raids, your hot shots, those kind of things. Okay. Okay, adjuvants. This is something else. This is one of those things that we can add to a chemical. We may add it to make it better, make it more effective. One of the things that I think of, we get called sometimes about aquatic weeds. And glyphosate is one of the chemicals you can use in water. But you have to mix it with a certain adjuvant because a lot of the cuticles on the plants that is going to control, they're very waxy. And that Roundup, the glyphosate product, cannot get through them. So you got to have a sticker there, make it stick to them. Makes it more effective and sometimes it'll increase safety. Okay, those surfactants, they're going to have, you know, they're going to be one of those sticker type things. Also, you know, believe it or not, you can actually make chemicals be wet, almost like a wetter state. They spread out better. They'll wet the plant better. They'll get spread out so the insects can get them. That stick better. They make everything work better together. Foam markers. Y'all driven by a field and seen like the drops of foam, and y'all once on down the field you see the spray rig. They're marking where they spray, so that they know how much overlap or where they need to go to make sure they get good coverage. Okay, so even markers like that. Okay. All right, now we're on 5 and 6. We're getting there.
Save any of it.
Anybody need a break? Restroom real quick. Okay. We'll keep going. Okay, environment. That's anything that's around us. This room, it's outside. You got to think about where you are when you're doing any of this, because we talk about chemicals in this, but IPM is very important. It's only one tool in the toolbox. So we got to think indoors, outdoors. You know, what's the air quality? What's the soil look like? What other plants are out there? What people are around? Are some people more susceptible to something? Think about where you eat, restaurant field, those kind of things. We got to think about that. So how can those pesticides affect those places we're going into? If they have pests that, you know, they reach a certain level, they've got to control them. What do they control them with? Does that get on your food? Does that get on your clothes? You know, does that affect your next door neighbor? Okay. And, you know, the other thing is when we talk about pesticides moving off site, they can drift off site, they can actually run off site, and they can cause damage. There are some chemicals that are older chemicals we found that are persistent in the environment. They'll stay in one spot for a long time, but you get a 100-year flood, it may move them across the field, and you can see the perfect line. You can follow exactly where it went down. Picklorand's one of them I'm thinking of. And it stays in one spot pretty well. But if you get a flood, wherever that water went, that's where that picklorand's going to go.
We definitely have floods here.
Yes, we definitely have had floods. But, you know, and inevitable, I had a call, like I said, I got a meeting, and one of them I've been around long enough. I had a call several years ago. The neighbor was a farmer. These folks had moved here. The farmer was spraying, and some of their prize shrubs started curling. The leaves started curling, and the blooms started getting distorted, and all this stuff. They had drift issues. So it can happen. Be mindful of where you are and what's going on. Okay. All right, sources of contamination. You know, a lot of times we want to blame what we're doing on the farm for everything, but also you've got homeowners, you've got parking lots. How many of y'all went to Walmart the last few days or the grocery store the last few days? Did you look at the parking lot? Have you ever watched that rainbow in the parking lot? That's gasoline, oil, antifreeze, brake fluid, transmission fluid. That's all those chemicals that are going down into the water. Okay. So parking lots are notoriously bad. Industrial facilities, even our own water treatment facilities, everybody contributes. It's not just one. You know, and I don't know about y'all, but I've heard I had a master gardener a few years ago, and her son was so excited. He had fertilized his yard. He used like 4 bags of fertilizer on a yard about the size of this room. Had the greenest grass in the neighborhood. He was so excited. What do you think happened the next time he had it rain?
It all washed away.
A chunk of that fertilizer got washed away because he had over fertilized. So, you know, urban runoff is real. But if you've been down to Virginia Beach or anywhere like, they actually have commercials on, you know, soil tests, don't over fertilize, all this stuff so that they don't, you know, a lot of the big cities are starting to do it. So we got to think there's 2 types of contamination. One is point source. Point source, you know exactly where it's coming from. Is it coming from the water treatment plant? Is it coming from your spray rig? Is it coming from your septic system? You know exactly. You can point to it, and that's where it is. Okay? You know where it's at. The other is non-point. Non-point is you don't know where it's coming from. It could be broadcast over several acres, and then all at once you see something. It could be coming from multiple sources. So it is non-point. It can become, think about it as, it can come from anywhere. You can't pinpoint where it's actually coming from. Non-specific. Okay. Now, sensitive areas outdoors, some of the things we want to think about. Talked about groundwater earlier. Lindy was talking about that. Any conduit that goes directly into the groundwater, we want to avoid. Forest soils, if we cut down trees and we've got tree roots that have rotted down, those are perfect tunnels into our groundwater. We want to avoid spraying on those. Want to be very careful with surface water because that goes into our water treatment plants in different places. Schools, hospitals, playgrounds. If we had endangered species in the area right now, like I said, last December I checked, we didn't. This December we may have. I don't know. I haven't checked yet. Beekeepers, if you have neighbors who are beekeepers and you're spraying an insecticide, let your neighbors know. At least 24 to 48 hours in advance. 48 is even better. That gives them a chance to either cover the hives, move the hives, or something, just in case. If you're near the Yell down Southampton, you know, the areas of the little corner of the Dismal Swamp that comes up there close to that, that's a sensitive area. State parks, Pocahontas State Park, city parks, different places like that. Okay, and we don't want to get the neighbor's prize being an off target. Okay. Indoors, we got to think about if we spray for cockroaches or we spray for bees or anything like that. Where are the people working? Where are they living? Where do you sleep? What are their health statuses? If you're in a hospital, you've got to be very careful because you may have people with respiratory problems. They may end up allergic if they have a reaction if they breathe that in. So we got to think about that. Also, some of the animals we have, our pets, you know, we got to treat their beds, you know, for fleas, that kind of thing. If we have an infestation, how many hours do we have to wait before the dog can be back in its kennel or its crate or its bed after we treat it and wash everything up? You know, sometimes we don't think about that. We just spray and go, right? But there's a reason. Okay, you want to think about those sensitive areas. You know, what are the sensitive plants? Had a freeze not long, a few days ago. What happened to those sensitive plants that were still out in the garden? They all kind of drooped down. My fig outside my house is just, it's all drooped. Leaves are getting dark. I mean, it's toasty for the winter. Okay. Then you got to think about where's the air conditioner. Even the air conditioner on the cab of your tractor. Those filters don't count for inhalation deals. Okay. We got to think about what we're doing. Also, you know, think about what we can do to keep things from being an issue. Leave space. Leave those buffer zones. Some labels will tell you specific amount of space around. Stay away from the road, away from the stream, away from the school, away from the hospital. Okay? So we got but those labels are gonna have that on there because the label is the law. Read those labels. It'll tell you where you can use it, how you can use it. You know, what's the considerations? Like I said earlier, you may not want to use something more caution or warning instead of a danger chemical. What kind of handling requirements do you have? May tell you you do never want to store chemicals such as pesticide with dog food or any feed. Because if it cross-contaminates, you can poison your animals. And if you poison little brother and little sister's prized show heifer, what's gonna happen to you? You're gonna be in a puppy palace with a dog, right? So just think about that. Okay, so make sure you pay real attention to what goes on. Okay? Okay, pesticide actually does move. It can move. Air is a big common one. That's called what we call drift. It can end up in ventilation systems, wind currents. Like I said, you can move from that field over to the neighbor's prize roses. You don't want to mess up grandma's prize rose bush, right? That her grandmother gave her. It also puts you in a very, very ugly light, right? I don't want that to happen. Some of these have happened. Like I said, I got a million more stories. Water runoff is one way water has been coming down out of the sky last several months, not only weeks, but months. We've had runoff, we've had bleaching, we've had stuff that's actually moved off the spots. You know, soil saturated, it permeated down in that soil. Now it's pretty saturated, it has nowhere to go. So it's running off and it's getting a lot of leach and it's picking up stuff. We don't necessarily want it to pick up. So you gotta think about, those objects people, water can sweep us off our feet, so it can sweep a lot of other things off as well. But we want to make sure that, if we spray, we'll talk about PPEs in a minute, but, if we have our chemical boots on and we've been mixing and spraying, we want to make sure we take those off before we go into the house, because if not, we just spread pesticide right into the house. Yeah, so we can be a culprit. Drift, this is pesticide, it moves when it's released into the air. And some of those potentials that we can reduce those by is use larger droplet size. Because that way the drops actually go where they're supposed to go. We use real fine mist, they're more likely to drift off. Some of the chemicals we can use lower pressure, that'll also make those drops bigger, and it'll give it, it can actually fall instead of drift. May actually lower our boom height. If our plants are only about 8 to 10 inches, we don't need a 32-inch set boom, do we? Because we got a whole lot of space there for airflow and drift. So we want to lower our booms, okay? And avoid windy conditions. There are actually certain labels that will tell you to monitor the wind speed, and at a certain wind speed, you have to quit spraying. Okay, if we've got here, we've got a lot of the, we're spraying up right. We've got some drift potential because the further that goes up, the smaller those drops get, the more wind there is up there, the more it can blow off, right? But if we get closer to that, we have bigger drops, we get closer to what we're going to spray, our drift potential gets a lot lower. That's kind of an indicator. Okay, vapor, fumigants. Fumigants are one of those things, you've heard people talk about gassing the greenhouse or gassing at the back of bed. Anybody ever had anybody put out a flea bomb? That's a fumigant. They are non-discriminatory. They kill everything. Okay, they're a vapor. Now we do have what's called non-fumigant type things. Did anybody hear a few years ago about the person who put some phosphine tablets under their house? It turned into a gas and killed their whole family in Texas. Okay, This is actually a non-fumigant, it turned into a vapor. They were having a rodent problem, they put phosphine tablets under their house. It mixed with water, created a vapor. They did not get their family out. Killed the entire family. Those are real people. So we need, that's a type of drip. So we got to be real careful and follow those labels because the label is okay. So just make sure more times when we can have drift, you will see this again. High temperatures and low humidity. Because moisture wants to be taken up in the air, right? We got to think about that. You'll see those again. Movement of pesticide in water. Runoff. We all know what runoff is, right? Think of a parking lot. The easiest way I can do. Fix it up, runs it off different area. Leaching. This is the movement that can either be down toward the soil or it can actually run off of the soil. But it picks stuff up. Leachate is what it becomes when it picks up things. Does that make sense? Okay. And this can result in groundwater contamination. Anybody ever heard at the landfill they've got to have a 100-year collection of leachate? If we have a 100-year flood, they're going to be able to collect 100 years worth of water, take it to the treatment plant to get it treated. That leachate is what that water becomes when it picks up stuff. Okay. So your groundwater and your surface water, y'all see I know y'all see the water stop. Okay. So you have your water, the evaporation, the condensation, condenses and then it precipitates back out. So this is how all that works. Even when it gets down into the ground, it can go down into the ground or wells get that water that's in those aquifers. But eventually, that water over time has been on the surface at one point and been back into the ground at another. Okay? It may take it millions of years to do that, but at one time or another, it's going to be both. Okay? So think about the water. So we want to protect the groundwater. And what's really going to be important, and this is more when you're mixing, is when you're putting water in those tanks, make sure you have one of those anti-siphoning devices, an air gap or something when you put water in a tank. Because if you have a big tank and they're putting water in it, sometimes we've had people go, I'm going to go and do such and such, let the tank fill up. Well, by the time they get back to the tank, it's filling up perfect when they left. Come back 15, 30 minutes, so out back, all the water's gone. It backsoftened. They had chemical in it. There's been people who contaminated their own wells by backsoftening. Okay, so you want to make sure, check that groundwater, have those anti-siphoning devices or those big air gaps. Locate your storage at least 100 feet away from any water sources. Springs, sinkholes, wells, those kind of things. And have your mixing and loading sites at least 100 feet away as well. Because you don't want runoff to get in there. That's going to be very important. Then we talked about the back siphoning devices, but see, they actually keep it sucking it back in here. We've had that happen to people. And a lot of times they've actually had to seal that well, dig another well or drill another well, and if they hit the same aquifer, they've got the same problem. They've got to seal that well as well. But now they've got two contaminated wells that are sealed. Okay, when we're thinking about pesticides in the groundwater, the solubility, how soluble it is, how quickly it's going to get into that water, how quickly it's going to be absorbed. The other thing is how long has it been in, how long is it going to stay there. Atrazine that was used in corn, when I worked in Missouri, I had 4 of the cities across the country that had the highest atrazine levels in their water in the country, out of the top 10 cities, little rural towns in the country. People could not drink their own water. They could not cook with their own water. They had to bring water in for that community. Their wells were all contaminated. So persistence, and they don't know how long it's going to be that way. I'll probably long be gone with that atrazine zero out of those parts. Okay. We gotta think about that, how persistent something going to be in the soil. How highly soluble is it? Is it, is it moderately or highly persistent? It's gonna be there for a long time like that atrazine. Okay. Things that are not strongly absorbed. Believe it or not, Roundup, the glyphosate product, if you ever read the label, it tells you to spray it on what? Active green leaves. It is taken up by the plant that way. If you get it on the soil, it binds. It's just like you closing your fist around it and never letting it go. It stays right there. It stays in that soil, especially placed. Right here. It will not work. It will not be released. It's stays. That's how that works. Okay, so read those labels. So it's
And that's what makes it so great.
yeah.
One of the lower toxicities, it's amazing.
Used correctly. Okay. Sometimes labeling may not address some of these properties, but make sure it will tell you about leaching in the groundwater, how it leaches in there. So we got to think about we want to look at what we're using. Soils. A soil may be affected how that chemical works as well. Sandy soils got a whole lot of pores in there, right? You can go through them pretty quick. Low organic, there's not a whole lot of organic matter there to hold them. Rainfall like we've had. So we got to think about those. Talked about all these already. We got to think about where we're spraying. If we've got a well in the middle of our field, we want to have a buffer. Okay. Tolerances. Now, the thing is, when it comes to plants and animals, and I know y'all talked about this to Jennifer's a couple weeks ago. There's withdrawal days, right, before you can take animals to slaughter. Well, on pesticides that we use in crops and stuff, there's also days to harvest intervals. So when we use anything, we have so many days that we can't harvest it. But if we have a crop that's going to stay, it's going to be harvested in the next 2 days, and we've got a problem, we need to spray. We read the label and it says, do not harvest for 10 days. Are you going to use that chemical? No, because you can't harvest it. So you can't, because there are tolerances, believe it or not, how many bugs, how many rocks, anything can be in any of our food. And some of them is absolutely zero. So you have to adhere to those days. The days withdrawal, like on animals, days to harvest on crops. Okay? Works the same way. And they have a certain, and it's usually in a parts per million or parts per trillion, depending on what it is. Okay? Thing is, there's even chemicals that if we use, say, on pastures, we have to pull the animals off. They can't graze for so many days. Because if it is residual in their meat or their milk, we can't use it. Okay? Just like our vaccines, antibiotics, or anything. So there is that legal time, and it's got to be observed. It's going to be on those labels. Please read those labels. Anything that is harmful to non-target animals or pollinators, such as honeybees, orchard bees, there's certain wasps, there's butterflies, there's moths. There's a lot of pollinators. Most of the time we think directly of the honeybee, but there's even bats can be pollinators. Okay, so we've got to think about the pollinators. So how are we timing those? It will tell you honeybee specific, very early morning to very late at night, before they either come out or after they go in. Birds, they'll tell you to be real mindful of granules, especially when birds are migrating, because birds have crops and they have to take in those rocks, and that they don't have teeth, so those rocks, all that muscle works in that crop and gizzard area to actually break down their food form. Okay, so granules they really like, they think it's kind of little rocks. So you can poison them that way. Also, we got to think about the beneficials. Lindy was talking about earlier. You don't want to do something really broad spectrum to get those as well. Okay. Aquatic species are very susceptible. Okay. The thing is, depending on how they affect you, depends on their makeup. Some people can get some environments, it can be very persistent. It can actually kill some of the organisms we want there and leave the others that we don't want. So we can have overpopulations of the bad stuff. Or they also break down with sunlight, some of our chemicals in the environment. So we want to make sure when we're breaking them down, it could be in sunlight, it could be metabolism, those kind of things, how it persists. But we want to make sure what it is and what we want to avoid. All right, the persistence, y'all know how long it stays there. Accumulative, that means it accumulates in our body. That can give us more of a chronic issue. A lot of the old organophosphates, they were chronic. They were cumulative. They accumulated in the body. Okay? So the Endangered Species Act, everybody's heard of DDT, right? Okay, this was administered by the Department, U.S. Fish and Game Department, and this is those things that are persistent in the environment that affects the animals. DDT is one of them. It makes it illegal to harm certain endangered species, and that includes on the pesticide label. So, you cannot kill anything with a pesticide that is endangered. So also, they have selected animals, selected wildlife, selected plants, selected mollusks in certain areas that you may or may not be able to use it. Okay. Any questions there? Any break yet? All right, now this is how they work. This is the hazard, and the hazard, you need to think about what you're doing. Hazard, that's going to equal the toxicity and the exposure. The hazard to the environment to you. Okay? Toxicity, that's going to be the ability of whatever that chemical is to cause harm. Believe it or not, there's a toxicity level of water. There's a toxicity level of salt. There's one of sugar. So it's not just pesticide. Okay? Enough salt can kill you. Enough sugar can kill you. So, the toxicity, how much of it can cause harm, and it's all dose related. How much is it? Okay? Exposure. What's the dose? How long are you exposed? What's the route of exposure? How often are you exposed? That equals the hazard. Okay. Now, when we're making these decisions, we want to kind of keep a balance. We want to use the lowest toxicity we can use. We want to kind of stay in that caution and warning and away from the danger as much as we can. We also want to make sure that we get something that has lower exposure so that we're not in it all the time. And also we want to make sure that that's our tool in the toolbox. We want to make sure it works, right? Because if it doesn't work, it doesn't do us any good, does it? No matter how many times. Okay? This you'll see again. Acute. This is the exposure that when you can get sick that happens quickly. Okay? Very quickly. Chronic is over time. It accumulates. Accumulate the fat. Accumulate the liver. It can cause you some serious health issues. It's accumulated. Okay? LD50. This is the lethal dose that kills 50% of the test population. It's generally rats. Okay? This is how we measure the toxicity. Now, so when we want to kill 50%, this is usually expressed in milligrams per kilogram. And some of them, the lower the LD50, the higher the toxicity. This is one of those numbers, if it's really low, it's bad. Don't take much. The higher the LD50, the more of it takes to see. Or kill them. Okay, signal words. We talked about those earlier, right? Caution's low, warning, danger's highest, right? All right. So this is a chart that tells those. The LD50, it's milligrams per kilogram. If it's in the caution, it could be a pint that it would take to kill. Some of them, if it's slightly toxic, maybe an ounce to a pint. You start getting into warning, it could be tablespoons. You get into danger, it can be drops. So you see how it works? The lower the amount, the higher toxic. Okay. LD50. Okay. Danger, skull and crossbones. Yeah, have you ever heard of botulism? Improperly canned food? Doesn't take much to kill. Okay. Yeah. Butyrene, it's going to be one of those, the algicide. Some folks use it in your fish tanks, the bad fish tanks, algae control. In the danger around. Table salt takes a whole lot to kill you, but it can't kill you.
And it'll kill you for flexing.
Yes, it will. Yeah. Aspirin. See, so it's not only the pesticides we use that has LD. The dose makes the poison. Okay, exposure routes, you'll see these again. Inhalation, that's going to be through your nose. Remember that dust. Oral, take it in. You can drink it like the lady did. Mixture of pesticides at that time. The other is dermal. That's where most of our exposure happens, usually right here on our arms, where we're mixing, loading, those kind of things. The other is ocular. You can go through the eyes. Okay. So just be mindful that those are the 4 ways it gets in, and there's 3 signal words. You will see those again. Okay. All right. If you have some delayed effects, you know, it can take you a whole day to get sick. A few years ago, I think it was Lindy and I. We were doing remember that container pickup, and somebody forgot to didn't rinse a jug properly. We were in a far reaches.
More than one somebody.
Yeah, more than one somebody.
Shipping container full of pesticides.
Yeah, and Lindy and I were in the back moving the jugs up, and what's that smell? I don't think anything about it, you know. They've been in here a while, you know. We're in the back. Within 24 hours, we both had flu-like symptoms.
Yeah.
We had pesticides. And we were in the back of the trailer, so we knew. It was like, I wonder. Okay, so, you know, or it can be chronic. You can take a whole lot of exposure, you know, many times getting the same thing. Types, you know, we talked about chronic. Chronic effects, they can be things that happen to, you know, stay with you. I mean, people can have breathing problems if they get exposed, you know, inhalation-wise for the rest of their life. Reproductive problems can happen in the kids. And then system-wide shutdowns, you know, liver problems, kidney problems, those kind of things happen as well. Okay. So, you know, what we want to do is we want to make sure we wear the proper protective clothing and everything to avoid overexposure. We want to limit our exposure as much as we can. Okay, some statements you'll see on labels. This product has been determined to cause tumors in laboratory animals. It can cause cancer, potentially. This product has been determined to cause birth defects in laboratory animals. So those can be on there. Kidney and liver damage. Allergy effects. You know, some folks are very sensitive to different things. There's a gentleman that I work with that with the cattle side, when they are doing synchronization for the cows. He cannot give a certain chemical because he was exposed to it and he got as red as your shirt. His arms from the tip of his finger to his shoulder. they literally had to wash him down. I mean, he's allergic to that particular vaccine. He can't be around it. Okay? So some people are more susceptible. You know, there could be something very sensitive in you or to that to make it more sensitive, that makes you more sensitive to it. And also, you know, the systemic effects, you know, asthma could be triggered in those symptoms. Also skin irritations we talked earlier. And getting something, have you ever gotten in dust in your eyes, eyes and nose get red and runny and all that? You ever had that happen to you? That's a type of allergy effect. It can happen with chemicals, it can happen with just about anything, depending on what kind of exposure you got. To minimize the exposure, think about all your integrated pest management types. You know, chemicals are just one tool in the toolbox. So minimize that pesticide use for as long as you can. Select that safe formulation. And you can, you know, use the product that has the lowest active ingredient percentage. So that way, and it's still effective. You want it to be effective, but use the lesser if you can. And also, you know, use it in, you know, the lowest effective rate you can. Make sure it happens. And then make sure you use enough of the pesticide to complete the job. You don't want a whole lot left over, but you want to make sure you've got the right amount.
I was gonna talk about that one.
Okay.
That reminded me, so, John Ayers, he taught some classes for us in the past, he told us, well, number one, is you mix according to how big a field you're gonna use. If you're gonna be spraying a 10-acre field, you read the label and you mix enough to spray a 10-acre field, well, if you have leftover, well, you did spray enough. So don't say, okay, I've got leftover, well, maybe you need to spray it out there in the field, but he got to tell them a story about, you know, if you say, well, I'm gonna save it, put it in a bottle, put it in a jar or something like that, these chemicals, especially if you mix them, they may end up changing the nature of the chemicals. He told us a story of somebody that mixed something and they saved it for like a week and they sprayed it and the chemicals had changed to sulfuric acid that they sprayed on all their plants.
And that sterilized everything.
Yes.
That smoked everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
So make sure you mix only, like say, only what you need, and even under spraying is still an issue because you had that leftover, which means you didn't spray what you needed, and then what you
Calibration is key.
Yes.
Yeah.
But just that whole turning it into sulfuric acid, that just blew my mind there.
Oh, it can. They can change. It's scary. It is scary. So we make sure we only use what we need for the job. Okay, to minimize our exposure, now we're going to talk about some PPE. And we're going to also talk about some application methods. I mean, sometimes we can use a cotton ball instead of a hand. Okay? You know, it may be something as easy as a little hand sprayer to spot spray a couple of things instead of getting out the tractor and the big sprayer. Okay, it may be something that simple. So using the right tool for the right job. We're going to talk about PPE. We are not going to model it. We are not going to do that. Okay, minimum PPE on any label, and that is personal protective equipment, is going to be long sleeve shirt, long pants, socks, and shoes. That is minimal that's going to be on any label. You will see that again. Okay?
Notice I didn't have gloves or eye protection. Long sleeves, long pants, socks, and shoes. The Sperry's without socks don't cut it.
Yeah, does not work. Okay. And if you want to get stopped and get your picture taken by the investigator, be out there in shorts and flip-flops. He has pictures. Or Crocs. That's one of his. That's another favorite one too. Okay. Now I will tell you, when you mix chemicals, they usually call for more personal protective equipment, or what we call PPE, than it does for applying. Some may call for an apron, some may call for goggles, some may call for additional gloves, or a stronger type of glove. We'll go into some of those here in a minute. But it's going to be on the label, because the label is law. Okay, so follow all of those precautions on the label. Okay. Now, also you have re-entry intervals, what we call going back into a field, or even on your sidewalk. It may be as short as a couple of hours, it may be as long as a few days. Okay, but And we talked about the interval, the harvest. Now, the thing is, if you go back into those areas that you have sprayed before that time is elapsed, you have to put your PPE back on, or the appropriate PPE to go back into that area. That includes the sidewalk that you sprayed for your wife, your mother, your grandmother, whoever. Okay, so that's why wear the proper PPE. Also, always wash your hands with soap and water before you eat, you drink, or go to the bathroom or smoke or anything after you've applied pesticides. Washing your hands, you would think would be simple. It would be kind of common sense. Make sure you wash your hands. Also, pesticide contaminated clothing needs to be washed. If it really gets bad soap, you need to dispose of it properly. It will tell you how to dispose of unwanted chemicals. That kind of thing.
Wash it separately.
From your family's laundry, do not cross-contaminate anybody's laundry.
And wash an empty load between.
With as hot of water as you can get in your washing machine. These set saver washers and all that, they don't clean it near as well. Okay? Hang them outside on the line and let the sun break them down as well. The sunlight can break down chemicals. Also, some of our farmers have actually started having a washing machine down in the shops.
I will say, as someone who has recently shopped for washing machines, it's hard to find one that is ag worthy.
Yes, it is.
You're gonna pay for it, but the warranties will not cover non-house use on a lot of them.
Yeah.
So if when you're shopping for one for ag use, you need to make it clear how tough it needs to be and that it needs to fill all the way out with water. But they're gonna ask you if you're gonna put it in the house or you're gonna put it in the shop. The warranty will not cover it. Like in the shop.
And I know some of our local farms too, they actually have uniforms. They have a uniform service that actually washes their uniforms. You need to let that uniform service know what they're dealing with up front. Because you don't need to cross-contaminate everybody on the farm's uniforms in case something happens.
And a lot of farms have gone to that for the reason of this chemical issue. Somebody in the family, the wife, the mom, was sensitive to one of their top chemicals and they should do laundry. So there's things like that. You really want to keep it on.
And having a pair of gloves for whoever does the laundry would be a good thing. But also keep your chemicals in the original containers. Never put them in food containers.
No, everybody's got Gatorade bottles.
Gatorade bottles, milk jugs, soda bottles. No. Or it's one that they show us in pesticide disposal, the Jim Beam bottle.
Little glass bottle.
Yeah. Don't do this. Okay, and lock them. Put a lock in your pesticide storage. And remember, always keep it out of the reach of children. Pesticide poisoning, actually, anybody in criminal justice, they actually go through a section now, recognizing chemical pesticide poisoning, because they've actually had people die in the drunk tank, pesticide poisoning, and drunk. So they've tried to figure out, try to teach them different ways to look at things. But you can have nausea, you can have vomiting, you can have diarrhea, you can have sweats. It's very stomach cramps. It's very flu-like symptoms. Okay. So flu-like symptoms, chills, all those can happen. Some people who are very sensitive end up with chest pain, difficulty breathing, and those kind of things. And so they're going to think they're either drunk, they can stagger, they have muscle cramps and spasms, they can stagger. So drunk and flu-like symptoms you can have. We had flu-like symptoms. It's real. Yeah. Personal protective equipment. This is where we get to talk about PPE. You do have a section on the label that will tell you about spraying, mixing, handling, even in early entry, all that stuff. PPE minimums. You can wear more, but you can't wear less. And applicator, you are legally required to wear what that label tells you to do. You do not want to be a picture on the investigator slideshow. Okay? He does have pictures. Okay? Earlier, okay? Long sleeve shirt, long pants. Okay, socks and shoes. Sometimes it may be waterproof gloves, it may not be, depends on the label.
Sometimes it will specify the
Glove.
material.
Yeah,
that they
and
use.
we've got several different down here, okay, for your A's, okay? Chemical and resistant waterproof gloves. Oh, yes, we have got a lovely set down here. Okay, we'll pass these around. Those are nitrile.
Yeah, the nitrile.
Yeah. And these are too. But you notice the mills are different, the thickness of those gloves are different. How long you can use those with chemicals are gonna be different. Neoprene, let's start those over here. Now I want y'all to feel the insides. Those are a little bit better than those. Let's see, this is PVC. But feel the insides of those. There's a problem with those, and we'll go over that in a minute. Let's see. Oh, these are Vitons. Start these over here. These are Vitons. Yeah, this is natural rubber. These are natural rubber.
As they're coming around, think about which ones you think would be the most chemically resistant.
Oh, beautiful. These are beautiful. Here's a different set of PVC. This is barrier laminate.
Space gloves.
These are space gloves. I'll give you. Now, these, believe it or not, those barrier laminates are the most chemical resistant gloves you can get.
And they're cheap,
And they're cheap.
but you should try putting one on. The fingers are farther apart than mine are.
And they're horrible.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna give you a little piece of advice. There's a couple of us in this room that may remember the old jersey gloves.
Oh, everyone still has those. You still find them in the road falling on the truck.
Okay, all right. Now, I will tell you, the gloves that are going around that have the felting, the liner in them, those are not the kind that you want to use in pesticide application. Because if some of that pesticide drips down into there and gets in that cloth and that felting, what happens? You keep getting exposed every time you sweat, right? So you want non-lined gloves to use. The jersey gloves you can put over those, and they are cheap enough to give you some dexterity. Because believe me, you cannot get dexterity in them things. I call them space gloves. They're horrible. But if you put the jersey gloves on them, you can actually pull all that off, dispose of your jersey gloves and those barrier laminates. Then you're okay. That's the one time I will tell you to use the cloth glove, but you use it on the outside and you get rid of it. Okay? But believe it or not, those are the best chemically resistant gloves. Some of these are rated for certain chemicals. They will tell you on the label what, a lot of times they'll tell you what not to use more so than what they'll tell you to use. They're actually rated for so many hours. Believe it or not, I do have you some nitrals up here. I have largest and extra largest. Y'all can have a pair of those. And they're unlined. So you can at least have those to put in your arsenal. But, you know, there's all kinds of different ones you can use. Most times I'll tell you what not to use. Okay? Now, a lot of them will not use latex, especially with some of those emulsified concentrates, because they got petroleum in it, they'll melt down. Okay?
And if you're working with other people now, if you're working with other people, you probably just want to avoid latex these days because you just don't know if it's allergic.
They're not allergic at all anyway.
These are also the other
Yeah, these are highly
highly chemical resistant.
too. You get a little bit better dexterity out of some of these. Now there are certain
Those are
ones,
very expensive.
Yeah, and this is not as an expensive set as some of the others.
They're usually like almost molded to your hand shape. They're very like.
And you can move everything about that part. That's about it. Because they're molded so well trying to grip something. It's about like trying to stick your finger in that cup back there and try to grab something. Not easy. Okay. But if it calls for Viton, get a set of Viton gloves that are molded to your hand. I mean, they literally come in different sizes. So
Especially if you have little hands.
yeah, they're hard to find smalls.
They'll have instructions for cleaning the gloves afterwards.
And the thing is, usually gloves are pretty good for like one season on the higher rated ones. Now, the nitriles that you can have, depending on what you're doing and how much you're doing, maybe for a few days to a couple of weeks.
But if you see any issues.
Any holes, wearing,
changes.
color change, get rid of them. Okay. A lot of the barrier laminates and stuff, I mean, the ones we pass around, those are the disposable ones. I mean, usually you can get a box of those and they'll be the season.
And they're nice to have around, just as a backup.
Because, if you've got those, if something does happen.
Or you have a chemical you're not used to dealing with.
And you don't know.
Your glove's not resistant to.
Or you don't know if you're going to be allergic to it. That'll be a bad idea. Boots. Now, most everybody in here is in some form of leather. You're going to need something like boot protectors over them. Pass them around. Because if you drip pesticide on your tennis shoes, on your boots, what's it going to do? It's going to be absorbing that, right? Every time you put on those shoes, guess what you do? Expose yourself to that chemical. Some people have actually had third-degree burns from chemicals because some of them can be caustic. Okay, so wearing those chemical-resistant boot covers, not a bad idea. Because I don't know about y'all, but I really don't want a good pair of Red Wings to be disposed of rather than something stupid. That would not make me a happy camper. Granted, I'm about ready for a new pair, but I don't want to lose one for that. Okay. Face shields and goggles. I mean, some of them could be as simple as safety glasses, but make sure you have the right safety glasses. Some of these work better than others. Goggles.
Your chemistry goggles there.
Everybody remembers these, I'm sure.
There's probably some out there.
Yeah. Right. And then
There's different face shields, some with head protection. As well.
This could be used if you have the right thing on the back. Overhead spraying, that kind of thing, keep your head from being exposed.
Pretty much you're going to use a face shield when at the same time you need some kind of head, covering. You may not want that necessarily if you're wearing a suit or something with a hood.
Well, this is good. No, this is not the one with the hood. That would be one with the hood.
But if you're wearing a Tyvek suit or something with a hood, you wouldn't necessarily need a hat or a helmet type, but
It's not like the dog.
face shield.
This is the coveralls we're talking about. These are Tyveks. As a matter of fact, you may not want to wear those for spraying, but just in case, you might want to have something to change into. A good friend of mine who I worked with for several years, Lindy's heard this story several times. She went out to a test plot. They were testing chemicals. They had an unknown. She was in a backpack sprayer. Saturday, she goes out, starts spraying, gets ready to go spray. She's walking to the plot. The whole bottom of the backpack sprayer falls out. That chemical, the whole thing, that's it all over. She went home the way she came into the world that day, stark naked.
So it's always a good idea to have, and usually we all have some kind of clothes.
We always have an
Some
extra
truck
set of clothes,
somewhere, coveralls or something.
But having an extra set of coveralls is probably not a bad thing if you need it. Okay, any chemical that requires a respirator, especially some of your fumigants and stuff, you actually have to be medically checked for those.
They have to fit you.
They have to fit you, and you have to pass medical exams. This could be another one. This one actually doesn't fit real well, but the cartridges on there, they may be for dust, they may be for mist. The cartridges have to be changed regularly, they need to be washed. That one actually is not gonna be worth anything, it's just basically show and tell. But anytime if you wear something as simple as that one, if you end up smelling chemicals to it, you're already facing the return of getting that thing, the cartridges in there changed. But anything with fumigants, if it requires you to have a fumigant mask, you actually do have to be tested. Tested and fitted.
And gentlemen, that means you have to shave for that.
Yeah.
Can't have your-
Unless you
can't
have it.
Unless you're, just rocking that.
And then if you do want to keep the beard and all that stuff, you can have an SCBA, you can have a self-contained breathing apparatus. You
You
can't have.
really look like a spaceman.
It really look cool.
See, one of these, so these, you can get Tabac suits in all kinds of different, here's
There's one with a hood, yeah.
This is nice too, because it's, you can do the head covering. But what's also nice about this one that the other doesn't have is it has this, obviously these are a one-time use kind of material, right? But it's got this sealing over your
You can tape
zipper.
it,
Okay, so you can zip it up and then tape yourself closed there, so you're not absorbing anything through that zipper. Obviously this is not completely waterproof, as my sister found out the other day when she thought it would help her in the rain. It was too much rain. So these, these won't save you if you're gonna get completely soaked with chemical, but this is very helpful to have on hand to help, repel some of that.
And then we talked about the hats already.
It's a great Halloween costume also.
Oh, it is. Freak people out. Well, thank you, the marshmallow man. But always read the label. You can always wear more. You cannot wear less than what the label says. Talk about the gloves. I mean, you can see here the natural rubber, it changes color pretty quick. A lot of chemicals, it does not handle well. Some of your natural rubbers, some of the dust and granules, you can spread those with them, and that's about it.
Yeah, natural it's not recommended.
It's not recommended for
There's
anything.
not uses for it, and
So,
there's a lot of synthetics.
and water and chemical resistant, read the label, because they will tell you specifically what gloves, especially what not to wear.
Yeah, leather gloves are out. They're your fencing gloves or whatever.
Yeah.
Gloves, but not your.
No. Because you get those and gloves, your shoes, your watches, belts, end up getting chronically exposed. Okay. No cotton, no canvas, no leather, cutoffs, and then the thing is, you don't wear cutoffs or anything, but under the cuff, if you're spraying, okay. If you want to do that? Okay. Over the cuff, the cuff over the glove is when you're spraying regular. Over your cuff.
So normally we're gonna want our gloves tucked, right?
Mm-hmm.
For most spraying. This looks bigger than my sleeve. But we want that, right? So then you're more protected. Obviously we would not be wearing this sort of material, but this is normal. But if you're spraying overhead, what would happen?
Yeah, all that.
It's gonna run right down your sleeve, right? So these would be great overhead gloves. That it would keep it from going down into your clothing. Obviously, if you're wearing other protective gear there, but that would help. So overhead spraying, you're gonna want your gloves over your sleeves. Normal spray, tuck it in. And then pants legs, what would you do with pants legs? With your rubber booties.
Over or under? Over.
Over. Yeah, you're gonna want to. Well, it's gonna depend on what you're wearing, but typically you're gonna want. You're gonna want to like, especially with the Tabac suit, that works really well because it's got the stretchy. You can pull it down over your boot or booty because you don't want it running down into your. You put on this protective gear, and then you're gonna feed the chemical right down in there to your leather boot or whatever you're wearing. So you're gonna typically want your pants like over your boot.
And we already looked at all the gloves. So it depends on what, if it says waterproof gloves, it depends on what you wanna do. Chemical resistant gloves are a different thing, okay? The Vicon, those are the ones that are expensive. But they fit real well. There are EPA charts available to tell you how long, what kind of chemicals and stuff these will use. A lot of times they'll put it on them.
Yeah,
It's handy. We usually do that at research, so
yeah.
don't worry about it
You
now.
get it research.
And we talked about the boots. Make sure your boots don't have any holes or anything, you know, covers, that kind of thing. We already talked about coveralls, eye protection, respirators. Okay, make sure there's no air gaps too. That's another thing. I cannot wear that fit. Because if I get it to fit up here, it pops around here. If I get it to fit down here, it pops off my nose. Those kind of things. Changing those cartridges. Wash it with soap and water after every use and make sure it air dries.
We do have an apron.
We do have the apron. There are two different types of apron actually.
You know, this is something that you wouldn't wear necessarily the whole time, but for mixing and loading, you know, you're gonna be more exposed or more likely to fill up yourself. This is a great addition. Yeah. Usually requires other help getting it, because by the time you're decked out in your PPE, your dexterity's not great and tying knots and things like that.
So this is the disposable one you use one time use. This one can be
That's
cleaned a
not
couple of times. The other thing about when you're doing the mixing and loading, when you're thinking about the bigger spray rig, think about where you're pouring that chemical and where you're standing. Ladies and gentlemen, where's the most likely spot for it to splash?
Right in your lap.
Yeah.
So
Not a good
be
spot.
conscious of that.
Yes. Remember, you can wear more. You can't wear less. Okay. All right. And then after you wash anything that can be reused and it's dried, you can just you can actually put it in a plastic bag to keep it from getting chemicals or anything else on it after you wash it. But you want to make sure it's dry. Also, never put your PPE in the same place you store your chemicals, because it can actually be absorbed into there, into those PPEs, and it can actually get you chronically exposed.
So if you've got a locked cabinet that you can lock and store your chemicals in,
Yeah.
that's where I'll put your
Yeah. Okay. Some of the respirators, as we were talking earlier, you know, now you've got to be fit tested for some of them. Some of them, like these, you can use temporarily for certain jobs. The cartridges do have to be NOSH and they have to be certified. The filters in the cab of your tractor do not count. So even if you're in a cab tractor with a brand new filter, if it requires that you have to have a respirator of some sort, you still have to wear that respirator in the cab. I know that just makes some of you really, really happy to learn that fact. You know, some of your dust masks may be as simple as one of those, you know, the simple dust masks you can go. You know, dust out your nose. That can be one of those dust mist type things. They still have to be the approved mask. But that's going to reduce your, you know, on dust. Some of the others get more higher chemicals. Okay, but they'll specify what respirator you need. Wash your contaminated clothing every day. If it gets really contaminated and saturated, we already talked about throwing it away. Use the hot water. Use only a few items in the washing machine and as hot of water as you can get. On the longest cycle, heavy detergent. And then keep it separate. And as Lindy said, wash a load in hot water with nothing in it between that and the family's clothes, if you have to use the same washing machine.
But if you're gonna be doing a lot of it, you need one for the farm. It's definitely worth having a separate wash.
Yes, it is. That is.
Even if it's just for cooking clothes.
Yeah.
Dead stuff doesn't get washed.
Yeah, it looks that way. Okay, transporting chemicals. Now, the safety data sheet Lindy was talking about earlier, you will also get that when you actually are transporting, because in case you have an accident, they need to know how to keep that in if you have a spill. Now, you always put it in the back of the truck, you never put it in the cab with you, and you always make sure it's secure. Make sure it's tied down and braced well. Don't put your pesticides and the feed and the people food and everything in the back of the truck together. One of my pet peeves, you know, if I have to go pick up a can of Raid at Walmart, is they don't put it in a separate bag. They look at me like I'm purple with orange polka dots when I ask for a separate bag for my Raid. But I do. But I am not going to get the pet food or my food or what I'm going to use every day in case that Raid decides to squirt. You know, my shampoo is not where I want Raid this thing. Okay. So just be mindful of that too. Keep dry, and also never leave your chemicals unattended in the truck or in the vehicle. Do not stop for lunch after you picked up your chemical. If somebody it could spring feet. Okay. You don't want that to happen. This is what not to do. You know, where you can slide around and go wherever you want. The one you want to at least tie it in. Okay. Mixing and loading. You always want to mix below eye level because of the splash. It can end up in your eyes. Work outdoors. Make sure it's well ventilated. Don't work alone. In case you do have a reaction to this, make sure somebody else knows where you are. What's going on. Also, stand upwind. That way you don't end up with it in your face. Some of us have had that happen to us before. You know. So you still get here in a minute, you'll see what I mean. And never leave that tank unattended when filling. We've talked about that. Talked about the air gap already. Okay. So here we have a problem. What does he not have on that he really needs to have on by mixing?
Long sleeve.
And what else? Gloves. Okay. Yeah, those two things right there is probably where 80% of the exposure for anybody happens. So over here he's a little better. He's got, you know, granted he's probably overdressed, or can be, but you can wear more. Can't wear less. So he's got his long sleeves, he's got his gloves, he's even got his face shield on, right? This guy don't even have a face shield, you can't really tell. The circle's in his way. He doesn't have a face shield, doesn't have any goggles, nothing. Okay. Cleaning nozzles. Don't blow them out or use your pocket knives. Please. Okay. We use a soft nylon brush. Don't use a toothbrush. They actually have a nylon brush that is literally one row of bristles. All my nozzles are actually at the station with the spray rig.
Yeah.
But they actually have a nozzle cleaning brush, and it has one row. Looks like a very weird toothbrush. But don't use a toothbrush. When you're changing nozzles, make sure you wear gloves. Don't get under those nozzles either, because if they've got any residue in them and it falls in your face, guess what? Okay, the 3 C's of spill. We'll see these again. First thing you want to do is control the spill. Stop it at its source. But you've also got to have the proper PPE. You don't want to go in there without gloves on. Okay, those kind of things. Stop the leak. Contain the leak. Okay, keep it from spreading. And then clean up. And I've got I've got an example of the cleanup kit here. If you've got a small spill, and I'm going to apologize now because you guys up front are probably going to get a face full of this, and I apologize. You can order them from Gamblers. You can actually make your own. The cheap unscented kitty litter at Walmart is great. Baby diapers are awesome. Heavy duty trash bags are great. This is an absorbent pad. You can replace that with something as simple as a baby diaper. Heavy duty trash bags, contractor bags are great. Okay. Does have some thin nitrile gloves in here. This one's not as bad as the others I've got. But some of them will have, this has got more of a cloth in it. You can see now and again, there's a little bit of the absorbent material. They actually have a powder, it's almost like oil stop, and they call it Resort. And it will make a dust bowl in here, so I didn't bring that one, be grateful. We gave it for several days, but you can actually put that around the spill and contain it in an area as well. But you know, you can make your own, make them pretty reasonable and inexpensive, or you can order a kit. You can make them as simple or as elaborate as you want to. There are some that range from about $40, $50 to up to several thousand, depending on how fancy you want it to actually be. But you know, having some kind of spill kit like that around is going to be a good thing. If you have a spill bigger than your little spill kit can handle, that's when you call 911, because that can be a hazard to the environment or human health. And you have how many hours to call VDEX after a spill?
48.
How many days before you put in your written report?
Okay.
All right. Woohoo! Our job is almost done. 48 and 10. Okay, spill kits. Like I said, have a broom, a shovel, or a dustpan of some sort, your gloves, and have baby diapers, get paper towels, shop rags work pretty good. Kitty litter, telling you the cheap unscented Walmart kitty litter works great. Oil dry is a little expensive, but it works too. But you know, you could have some bleach and or activated charcoal depending on what you do. We do another class. I actually use grape Kool-Aid to simulate a spill, and we actually clean it up with kitty litter. You can actually see the purple kitty litter. But you know, you can make them as simple as elaborate. The other thing I would suggest to you, if you have a shop or anywhere that you have brooms, that kind of thing, wherever your spill kit is, find the most, what you think is the most obnoxious color in the store of broom that is totally different than anything else you have in the shop. That's the spill kit. Okay. All the regular brooms are for, you know, okay. I don't care if you have to paint it, you know, hot yellow or hot pink or hot green or whatever, you know, some neon color, or make it striped like a zebra, you know, just make it totally different so that you know that it's for the spill kit, it's not for anything else. Okay. Pesticide storage, post signs. I did not bring any signs for pesticide storage, but I did bring you some keep out signs. If a couple of you want those for spraying areas, but though we do have pesticide storage signs, I've actually got to order some more, come out of them. So you can actually put that on the door of your storage container. Also, you want it well ventilated. You want to try to keep it at a reasonable temperature, consistent in there, so that it doesn't freeze or overheat. Keep them in original containers. Keep containers on shelves or pallets and raise them up. One of the things we also suggest is at the end of the season, sometimes people are doing their spring cleaning, you can find like the little short Rubbermaid containers that don't have lids. You can put your chemicals, sit in those and sit them on your shelves. That way, if you do have to have a spill, it's contained in that container. It doesn't soak into your shelving or it doesn't soak into your floor at all. So, contaminate multiple things. Always put your dries above your liquids because you don't want them to cross-contaminate. Okay. Storage only for pesticides. Don't store anything else in there. But you want your cleanup materials, anything for spray, you know, for spills, your PPE. You want them close, but you don't want them in the same building. You know, have them close where you can get them if you need them. Okay. And also, you know, make sure that you check everything pretty regular because you don't want anything leaking, especially big drums, that kind of thing. Pesticide disposal, when you have empty containers, we can dispose of those, triple rinse, jet rinse those, and put a hole in the bottom so we don't reuse them. We can offer those at recycling. Any excess rinseate or mixture, you can put those in a designated container and have those, actually you can offer those for pesticide pickup. Like I said, we just had ours, but we usually don't get rinseate. Usually folks go ahead and spray where they can and get rid of it and where they're supposed to. Any extra chemical that you've got, out-of-date chemical that you've not used, you can offer that for disposal as well. And also the rinseate rinse waters. Empty containers, this is a jet rinser. You actually punch a hole in it just rinse it for 30 to 45 seconds, and you'll be really pretty good about that one. This is a different type. There's one that we give sometimes at research. It's plastic. VDAX has those. That one actually makes me feel uncomfortable. I think I'm going to break it. But we have had the straight ones. So I like those occasionally.
And you just stab that
And
into
toward the bottom.
the bottom end, and it just power rinses it real fast instead of like rinsing it out for you.
Yeah. And anything, if you mix more than you need, you're allowed to put it on a similar site location to actually use the rest of it. You can use it as long as it is according to label. You cannot use it off label. So you must be on a labeled site. Extra formula, find a labeled site, or you can get, sometimes giving it to somebody may or may not be the best thing in the world, because when they come in and look at your pesticide records, just going, where did such and such go? Oh, well, I gave it to the neighbor down the street. Well, do you have documentation you gave it to the neighbor down the street instead of putting it in the green box? So it can be very interesting. Keep those in original containers. And the thing is, if you do have extra, as a matter of fact, at pesticide pickup, we have a gentleman, he was out of town, and we actually went over and looked at it, and he's got enough that he would actually warrant a contractor coming in and cleaning up his site instead of bringing it to pesticide pickup. Because we didn't feel comfortable with all he had. Okay. And sometimes if you have extra, if you've got some extra containers and you've not broken the seals on them, sometimes the company will take it back. And the other thing you can do is another suggestion we make for formulations and storage to keep from having extra, or use the stuff that's the freshest. Take a Sharpie marker when you buy it and put the month and the year that you bought it on those containers and rotate them so you use the oldest first. So you don't have 5 open bottles around the open jugs. Okay? You know which ones you got to use first. Okay, rinse water, you can actually put that back into your spray tank, the spray mixture, and spray it. So you can use it as mixed water. And never pour it down the drain. Now, there are some people that have mixing in loading areas that they actually have a tank. They actually have the grate system, and it's a tank underneath that platform that they'll have, that any extra stuff that happens to flow out will actually go in there. And occasionally, they'll actually, usually twice, maybe 3 times a season, they may have to have it pumped, depending on how much is done. So your rinse water, you can reapply that to a labeled site. So after you collect it, depending on what it is, if it's all the same thing, you can actually spray it. If it's a mixture of stuff, you've got to offer it for hazardous materials cleanup. Okay. Don't dump on the ground, no ditches, no septics, that kind of thing. Okay, now we're to short round. View questions. Which state and federal departments control pesticide usage? Federal first. EPA. This test is not over the book. What's the state with? VDAC, Office of Pesticide Services. Yep. EPA and VDAC, Office of Pesticide Services. Okay. What are the laws? State law. No.
Good answer.
PCA.
Pesticide
Control Act. Remember?
Right
That's
here.
a state one.
That's a state reg. What's the federal reg?
FIFRA.
Different, yeah. Different. That's the way it's always been done to me. So State Pesticide Control Act. All right. How many years is your private pesticide applicators good for once you? Oh yeah, y'all are already good. All right. Then you can make up to 4 years credit, right? Okay. When does your private pesticide license expire? Every other year.
December 31st.
First. Woohoo! Okay. How many body parts and legs and stuff does an insect have?
6 legs.
There you go. Okay. What is WP in formulation? Wettable powder. You're close. What does IPM stand for?
Integrated pesticide management.
Pest management, yeah. Okay. All right, any other questions? Y'all ready for this?
Yes.
It's not terrible,
Um,
but I will make a suggestion, read the questions twice before you read the answers. Because some of them are worded a little funny.
just as a side note too, the recertification classes we offer in the winter,